And then what we do, we'll go one of these, because shout out to Carla Klein with this beautiful surf get to watch. And then Anthony Wells, all up in the house, baby. Doing all right?
Doing awesome, phenomenal, actually. Like, I very much appreciate you. Even, this is amazing. Thank you for the your friendship, your guidance, things I've siphoned over you from you throughout the years, and the wisdom. You've demanded my respect, but you don't demand it. I appreciate you very much, and thank you for inviting me to your home.
Well, dude, that means a lot to me, and I want you to know that the feeling is extremely mutual, and I mean that sincerely. I share with a few people that you were coming on that know of you. And for those that listen to this episode and all the other ones, this is open to everybody. And it's an honor and flattered that I am when you even reached out and said you wanted to be a part of it. So I thank you for supporting me. You're always watching them and I'm watching you. And I know we've known each other for a hot minute, but for those that don't know this fine gentleman, Anthony Wells, you've been in the hood for a hot minute too. Now,
like 15, 16 years after I came back.
Because it's weird. Make sure you got that fistful. They're going to get mad at you. They're like, I can't hear him. It's okay. Rogan does it all the time. So it's interesting because I feel like I've known you my whole life, right? You know what I mean? It's like one of those feelings. But as we're getting older, I feel like we went to school together, but you didn't go to school here, right?
It's a very transient place.
Yeah.
And, there's also very weird phenomena in life, like 6 degrees of separation, karma, nostalgia, things of that nature. We're old souls, I suppose. Yeah.
But you moved here about 15 years ago?
About 2007, 2008. But my family was situated here for a good bit of time before then.
Okay.
But answering your question, I didn't go to high school down here. But I did come down later on. Made a lot of mutual friends through my cousin Devin.
Right.
He went to FPC. It's been awesome, an awesome experience. I'm really happy that the town has developed into what it is. It provides that outlet that people really needed.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because for those that don't know you, and why I admire the bananas out of you is the fact that you seem to have that kind of. I put it this way: you got Dragon Ball Z in you, man. You got the DBZ, and what that means from a whimsical standpoint is that a show like today is special for me because it's just about people that have tried to enlighten themselves, tried to empathize. You're vulnerable, and you're a real dude, man. And you're not about.
I really do try.
Yeah, and for those that don't know who you are, I've tagged you on Facebook, and I love that you just embrace for who you are. I put your chesticles on there today with the photo. I hope you're all right with that. My wife was like, you shouldn't have did that.
Whatever is clever, man.
I was like, hey, man, it's the real deal. And my role model off of this show is a very Joe Rogan-esque feel. And I feel like the people that he has on and the way that he formats the show is he doesn't owe anybody anything. I know he monetizes, et cetera, but I don't even monetize. So I really don't care if you're offended by my buddies here.
And rightfully so. You should speak your mind.
And I'm proud of you, man. And I mean that. Like I said,
it's been a long journey.
I can imagine. I want to take it from just because this is so the epitome of the beautifulness of this show is like I haven't seen you for a hot minute. Well, I see you digitally.
Even with the same understanding, nothing ever changes, man.
Yeah. So
it's changed.
You've changed.
Nothing ever changes as far as those bonds,
But here's where I would want to pick up where we left off is that I do remember back in the day, grinding at Turtle, I would see you more regularly and we would have some good chitty chats. And I know that you're one of just self-growth in all levels. And the last time we talked, if you don't mind talking about, because I don't know, did something happen? Did you go to a dark side?
Various things happen, yes.
We want to go there?
I wouldn't mind venturing in, but before we go in there, and I also, not to be rude.
No, do your thing.
I just wanted to do a few things really quickly.
Do your thing, baby.
Dragon Ball Z. Yeah.
You are in the hyperbolic time chamber.
2,000 times gravity.
Yeah. I was telling that to somebody that has no idea what that was. It was a client I had the other day. I'm like, listen, you're the equivalent of being in a hyperbolic time chamber. Like one day has equaled.
Yep.
I love it. So is it cool if we go there? I don't want you.
That's perfectly fine. I mean, I would love to do that because, that's what a conversation is. We'll feed off of each other.
You do your thing.
Just to keep myself from going off of tangents in terms of what I want to focus on personally, I want to present on the table.
Absolutely.
And talk I kind of like made a quick outline because I definitely go off on tangents because like things are all connected to each other and themes and different concepts and idealisms and stuff like that all bleed into each other to a greater truth. So I want to kind of have hone into these things as far as what I'm presenting in the conversation.
Do you think?
But I would love to get into what you're saying. I would love to. Before we continue, is it all right if I like do a little shout out or something? I mean, you could put this in the description.
Bro, listen, you do whatever you want. It's welcome home, babe. Like there's no format. Literally, whatever you want to talk about. You got people you want to give a shout out to? Yeah. That's what's up.
And if you don't mind, you could probably post the details as far as the ins and outs of the actual spelling and all later. But just made a personal website that has all my stuff as far as my artwork, my poetry, my podcast philosophies, just different things I've done throughout the years, cataloging different things. Because and this speaks to what you're asking as well. Paper prosthetics, okay, Origami Swan and paper prosthetics. They were both soul searching projects that I started when things were very much on the rocks. I was desensitized for all that I had seen.
For me, my own sake, and those that are listening, give me some chronological. Where were you on these rocks? I know we're gonna be jumping around, but I love you, and I want to know where were things starting to get rocky at that point where you're jumping at? Was this like last year?
Respectfully, I would want to get to that question, but I would want to go almost in an inverted way, like, or not.
I got you.
That's why I was lining it out like this. Basically, I wanted to I wanted to focus on overall vision and mission statement, then God, then myself, and then possibly like a backstory to how I came into all this. Because honestly, I was having the hypothetical conversation with you throughout the last day or so, and being out here. Came out here like 9:30. I was stretching on the beach, did a bunch of things, set this whole thing out as far as an outline. Because I mean, as much as I feel as triumphant as I do and conquering myself, because he who conquers himself conquers the world. Mm-hmm. And, there's so many other ways to put that. I really truly feel so happy, so content, amazing, completely endowed,
So right now you're happy when your eyes are closed kind of guy.
I'm very much one with where I'm at. I'm higher than perception or perspective or awareness. Higher than any of those things is acceptance, and higher than that is gratitude and being happy with your placement in life. And even higher than that is having the sense of humor to be able to laugh at your own folly sometimes.
How long you been in this good season?
It's probably the first time in my life that I've been this
for real.
Yes,
that's what's up, man.
Very hard struggle. I'm going to get into all
this. Baby.
But what I wanted to do really quickly, okay, so I have the website. You could put that up as well as my Instagram.
Yep.
My Instagram been getting more into different themes. I treat it like, being John Malkovich, where I'm allowing people to look into my thoughts, to delve into what I'm thinking day by day in different themes. And I'm trying to like associate different pictures that I'm screenshotting or saving.
Nice.
Or different things to paint a narrative in different themes. So I'm using that more artistically now. With Facebook, it was the same kind of thing at first. Like I used to go on there and blog and share everything and divulge all my information in the hopes to open up a dialogue, in the hopes to have people really to understand or to show me what I don't know. Before Facebook, I had a MySpace. Before MySpace, I had a Zynga. Before Zynga, I had Skonex. I mean, I've been doing this for a good bit of time. But I realized that the market kind of took a turn, became more impressionistic and jaded. But long story. I mean, see, this is why I have to say,
stay focused, baby.
I'll go off on tangents.
Well, the silver lining so far, correct me if I'm wrong, but your middle name is Vulnerable, bro. I love you for that.
Thank you. And I can attribute that to my second girlfriend. Her name was Nicole. We grew up. We went to school together. I was in Catholic school at the time, at St. Joseph's, and that was on 6th Avenue, right across the street from West 4th Street, which is how I got into handball.
Because that's where you're from, New York.
Yeah. But at some point, she was the first person I ever opened up to and told about. Because
give me a timestamp.
All right, so this timestamp, jumping back, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
This is when I was in 7th or 8th grade.
Okay.
And we went through.
And happy late birthday. And how old are you now?
32 years old.
Okay.
But me and her had basically gone through September 11th together. I lost my neighbor. He was a very close family friend, and she's the first person to open up to about things before that, previous to all this stuff happening. And she told me one time, and I lived my life by it after. She said that vulnerability is a strength.
Mm-hmm.
That vulnerability, I took that very literally, because profound wisdom in that. I mean, you can lie to whoever you want,
mm-hmm.
but never lie to yourself. And hopefully it'll generate from that. I mean, I try to be completely honest and transparent with myself first and foremost, and with anyone I can. Be genuine and goodwill to people, and do what you can, and express yourself the best way you can. Don't suppress yourself. Don't intentionally make a makeshift kind
Mm-hmm.
of facade to basically try to middleman someone into thinking that you're someone other than you are. Just have a conversation and just speak objectively on things that are actually bothering you. And that's how things get done, on a round table, not talking under the table, but on top of the table. There's no leaders. Everyone's an individual. We speak
Mm-hmm.
frankly from where we come from.
I love it.
But what I was sorry.
No, you're good.
What
bro.
I mean to say is, okay, so I'll start. Francisco, a good friend of mine, he has a website called Rectangle Solutions.
Okay.
Spelling's a little different. I'll let you post it.
We'll put that tag.
Exactly. My sister.
Where's she at?
Right now, she's in Berlin.
Wow.
She, like myself, I guess, is a prodigy in her own right. She went to Harvard, and then she went to Yale as a graduate.
God bless.
And then she went to London. Then she left and went to Berlin. I'm sorry, no, she's in Australia right now, I believe. Either Australia or
right next
Berlin.
door.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, she's amazing.
Older, younger?
Older sister.
Nice.
And I'll get into all this if you want me to explain chronologically. Also, I wanted to shout out, that's Christina Wells, that's my sister. She actually designed this shirt.
Nice.
One of the only two in circulation.
That's what's up.
She actually was able to make Fashion Week. And
nice, man.
She made Fashion Week in Paris, apparently, with this shirt. That's the only one of the only two. And the only time I'm going to wear it because I don't want to mess it up. But
hell yeah. Yeah, I see it. I like it.
So besides that, I wanted to shout out some local talent.
Hit it up.
You got Xavier Moonbound Troy.
Never heard of him.
Performing at Finn's not too long ago.
Love that guy.
He also came around the time where there was Joshua Cobb, Win a Wave. I mean, Mark Daly, Philip Gonzalez. They're both in Midnight Moxie and stuff like that. There are a lot of very artistic people in this town.
Yeah.
Anthony Malachi being one of them. I don't know if he's still here or not. There's so many people. And we've lost so many people as well. Good friends of mine, Emily, Vinny, as you probably know, through Craig and everyone. My friend AJ Fernandez, he got plucked before his time. Trisha, and now Mike. So it's been hard, but the memories,
man,
make you strong.
Well, that's what's up. Rest in peace, man, for sure.
But now that I've gotten to these references, and you can obviously post them in the description. I appreciate it.
100%.
For one, salute.
Hey, yeah, salute. You're ahead of me today, so you enjoy. Listen, I just want you to know something that I get a lot of people ask me, and they'll say, are you what are you doing with the show, et cetera. I want you to know that today is a very special day for me, because I know for you to share with people that you have no idea who these people are. Majority, I don't know who they are either, that are listening. And for you to say that you are just now finding peace of mind, it's a special thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what I'm finding myself to be magnetically attracted to are people like you, and not just in your season of greatness, but when you weren't doing well, you didn't fake it.
It's not the product, it's the process.
Right. And I've found that as a entrepreneur and being independent for a decade plus, it can get tough out there when you're taking people at face value from B2B, or even if it's just even if it is a person or a business, what they say is you want to take them at face value. And it's sad that a lot of people are portraying something that they really aren't. And what's happening here at this table is very precious to me, because there's something about this table that people are in front of and behind the camera. They just let it out. They always have with me in general. It's something I personally have always asked God to make people feel something different about me. And it's not me. I believe it's the guy upstairs. And I think because of that, in addition with the fact that I don't And I'm not going to sit here and like put you in a position of, I want you to succeed in all that you do, and not fiscally.
Likewise.
I can't stand the fiscal questions. What do you do? Is this?
It's
And
not
you've
about
never
the
been that kind of
monetary,
person.
It's not about the materialism. It's not the clothes. It's
Yeah.
the man who makes the clothes. We generate these.
I'm
things.
starting to get called out with the shirt, Ant.
Even these different things, these are all disposable arts, but
Amen.
It comes from a soul that's indispensable. I mean, that's how it. Speaking of which,
do your thing, babe.
I wanted to give you this.
Okay.
As a thank you. This is actually a book that I borrowed. This is
nice, dude. I remember you're a drawn man. This is for me?
Yes, for you.
Dude, what? That is what's up, bro.
I appreciate
It's very
it.
special.
Yeah, it's the first bit of color. I usually have like 2-point coordination or something that, color eludes me. Like the popsicles.
From your hands to the paper. That's what's up, bro.
I'm glad the colors, dude. The colors.
I gave you the cack rod today. See?
Like,
are you really?
No, I mean, I'm making a reference to the popsicle commercial.
This is what's up,
cornball.
Dude. I really appreciate that.
Yeah,
that's one thing that's happening is like I'm getting swag on the show, bro. It makes me feel very special. So now listen, if I'm gonna go, I want to know once again where did you start to have your, like, when did you step into your most recent hyperbolic time chamber? Like, where did things start? Where did gravity start to get?
I've never stepped out. The gravity.
You're still in.
I've ventured in deeper, and the gravity has shifted. Also temperature would go up and down. In that metaphor, like I've never left the time chamber.
But I would say there are
there are depths that I've gone to where things have become very.
There's times where we don't want to go into it.
I'll gladly get into it because I'm so, like, for one, again, vulnerability is a strength.
Yeah.
Transparency, everything. I would love to share that.
Let's
I have no qualms about it. But
where were we? What year was it?
It depends on where you want to start, because we can start as early as when I started looking into these things if you want.
Wherever you want.
Okay. So if we're to talk about my life a little bit, I had a very good and very bad experience living life. When I was born, a lot of things very much in the air. My mom and I actually died when I was giving birth to. The umbilical cord choked me and she bled out to death. And we crossed over at the same time. And I came back. I remember having dreams. My first dreams were basically having this reoccurring dream of touching a wall and seeing my hand and red and it fleshing out. I had later had dreams that were like more symbolic, that were reoccurring dreams as well. And it would be a good introduction to things to talk about it. Like I basically would wake up and I would be in a white room. And I realized that it wasn't a room at all because the walls weren't walls. They were just my vision expanding over an endless horizon. So it was just my field of vision in an endless void. And I'm like, where am I?
You're a kid at this point?
I was a kid. I was 5 years old. I kept having these dreams.
Before we move forward too, because I got questions in this in parallel with what you're saying. Did you lose your mother during that?
No, luckily not.
Okay, thank God.
Still around.
All right, God bless. So you're 5-ish. You're having these really vivid dreams.
Very vivid dreams. I've always had almost sixth sense, a very high sensitivity to a lot of things, because dying, crossing over. But I'll get into that later. Whenever you. What I would say is I had this dream, walls expanding, vision. Realize that I'm where I'm at 5 years old. I'm pretty much like, well, what I equated it to being is like I'm in purgatory. This is the gravity of forever. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, where am I? And the first thing that comes to mind is, infinity, forever, God, infinite concepts, like boundless things that aren't bound to numbers or any type of like understanding. And I kept thinking about things in my mind. At the time, I thought from like an ant all the way up to everything. And in the dream, the rapid succession of images going all the way up, I basically, in the dream, said no. And then my voice was stripped, and I realized I'm in a void. There is no air. There's nothing. There's no type of matter to even carry my voice. Just like in space, no one can hear you scream.
Right.
So at some point, again, when the walls kept going, and I realized there was no dimension because there's no objects to measure my eye off against, like width, depth, and height. My eyes burst and bled out,
And this is all in your dream, bro.
It's all in my dream, but it was a reoccurring
This is a habitual dream?
This is a reoccurring dream that I had for at least 20 different times from the time I was 5 on. And at some point, I think about where I am and all that stuff. I think it's scaled up, and then my head blows up and I wake up. Now, I had these dreams many, many times throughout when I was a kid. And at some point, true story, I woke up in the same situation because it was, again, and it's funny, it's kind of like waking up in the hyperbolic time chamber. And I basically woke up, and one day I was like, oh, it's just a dream. And I literally threw myself back, like I'm throwing myself back on the pillows. And apparently I was sleepwalking, sleep talking, and I hit my head in reality. Yeah. What I have taken that as, I mean, there's so many different things as far as symbolism I took it as is like, you know, loneliness, being alone forever, the finality of death or existence, coexistence.
Did you share this with people when you were growing up?
I wrote it many times. I even put it on Facebook at some point.
Yeah.
But I mean, people look onto it in you know, Silence of the Hearts or whatever the case is.
When you're on a timeout, as you were growing up, and I take you once again as someone who I would fall in love with as being a very vulnerable person, did you have the understanding then that I'm about to put myself in a position that, lack of better words, from a grade school perspective, you're going to be made fun of? Were you cool? Did I
worry about the
were you aware that were you looking more, for instance, my question is out of fascination of, especially as you're a juvenile, were you doing it looking to be embraced, or were you aware of like, look, I'm going to be so real here and I'm going to share some vulnerabilities and I know I'm going to get hated on, but I'm okay with that? Or did you hope that
I would want to get into it? To explain it through this after this, because it's just an introduction to what you're asking me for. And I apologize. I don't mean to.
Dude, you do you.
But the different themes, you know, what I'm coming into now, looking onto the same dream in retrospect, is that you know, for one, the existence of God. You know, if God didn't exist, then we wouldn't have a consciousness or an existence to be able to perceive nothing. There would be nothing. It's a mind-boggling, very scary thought. If you really think about it, like to have nothing exist at all. And I liken that to, you know, how beautiful is it that it's not like that? How beautiful is it that we have things and people we interact with? Even in mortality, it's a 15 minutes of fame. You're able to interact with people, and even if there is nothing after, which I really doubt, is I could prove it in so many different ways as well, factually, that even so, we have the ability to go out together. You know, generationally, we go out together. It's like running off a cliff, but you fly. You know, I've likened death to that very same thing. It's like Watership Down when the rabbit comes and he takes him on a great adventure. He's like, look, you know, I need to call on you to do something. Are you ready to go on this great adventure? You're needed elsewhere. That's what death is in a nutshell. And what you do in life echoes throughout eternity. This is just a preliminary, very temporary state that qualifies you in placement of what you need to do in terms of the internal struggle and things that are much more complex. And when somebody dies, in my opinion, they have matured to a standpoint, have an outlook to where they realize what they needed to in the time they were given.
Love it, man.
But to get into what we're, in terms of introducing the thought, I would try to go back as far as died at birth, was in a born premature. I have white nails because I was premature. I almost died, you know, and I had to take iron pills to turn my nails white. Wow. We struggled a good bit of hardship. When I was born, my sister and I split up. My sister stayed with my grandparents. I went with my mom. We went down to I think Jacksonville, North Carolina. I'm not too sure, but our house was blown down by a hurricane. Damn. We came back up. We bounced around in Brooklyn. At some point we lived in tenements and stuff. So we saw a good bit of hardship. When we were down here, when I was a baby, basically because of everything, how tumultuous and things were. I mean, she was literally working on a plantation, picking tobacco. Damn. That's how crazy things were. Came up there in terms of the poverty line. We lived off of oodles and noodles, which we called it, but it was top ramen and grenade drinks, which is 25-cent drinks, you know, living in a tenement where you have a single room, you have a small fridge, we share a bathroom on the floor, you know. And, you know, at some point, we went to different places as far as, you know, going into that same realm of like, you know, just seeing poverty, you know. And my mom, strongest person, one of the strongest people I know.
God bless, man.
She was like, I refuse to let my kids be subjected to this.
Now, it was. Do you have,
as far as the environment,
sibling wise? It's just you and your sister. You don't have. Is that?
No, we're good.
You have no. I'm saying, do you have more siblings?
Oh no, it's just me and my sister.
So, in that note, once again, don't mind if I love hearing about people's history and what made you who you were. In these moments, man, where were you? Were you running from it mentally? Were you embracing it? Were you you an angry kid?
I wasn't even developed enough to even know what's going on. This is before I was even like 5 years old.
Oh, so we're still okay.
I dropped off my grandparents, and they lived a polar opposite life. I went from being in projects and tenements, bouncing around from Brooklyn to different places. I lived in Teaneck at some point. We got robbed blind. Damn. Guys came down on a rope in a Mission Impossible like kind setup where they dropped through one of those Batman kind of enclosed windows on the ceiling. They stole everything. They robbed us blind. Damn. They took my first video game console, which was a Super Nintendo, or just regular Nintendo. I remember very clearly. They also broke into my mom's car, steal the radio. Came back the next day and they stole her car. She had it was rough up there at the time. 90s and 80s were nuts. Nuts. And at some point, I go to my grandparents to live polar opposite life as far as like opportunity and stuff like that. And
they're in where was that?
They were still in New York, but they were in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. We lived right outside of the amphitheater. We're on Grand and FDR, so where the M14 and the M22. I don't know if it's still like that, but they basically stopped at that last stop. Wild Style. They shot an amphitheater, the graffiti movie, like in the 80s.
Right.
That was the amphitheater. I was right across. I was right next to the FDR Park.
Okay.
Where it curves around and then it goes towards Battery Park City, the World Trade Center, 5 Points. I was the tip end of Lower East Side.
Gotcha.
But long story short, I mean, I really need to get out of it because it's gonna be a long story. But I went there. My grandfather and my grandparents, I tried to emulate them. I respect them so much.
They still with us?
They're still with us. They're healthier. He's
bless.
in better health than I am. He's 88 now.
That's like my grandfather.
He's healthier than I am. Ex-Special Forces, Korea.
God bless.
They
still in New York or?
No, they're down here.
Nice.
My family's been out here since maybe at least 30, 40 years.
Okay.
And they convinced them to come down. They came down maybe in the 2000s, and then I followed suit.
You got them.
I mean, I think there's probably a variety of things, like the pressure, sea salt, in terms of like just the joints and stuff. It gets cold up there, bitter, and just for the health aspects is awesome. Sunshine, vitamin D. You're not necessarily there's no thin walls. There's no crate. The more people that there are, the more
they're with their family.
Family, exactly. That's the main.
Yep.
But my grandfather, I emulated him best that I could. He always taught me shake with a firm hand, stare people in the eye. If you're on time, you're late. If you're early on time, if you're late, don't bother showing up. Accountability, reliability, integrity. And that's also why, my core beliefs. My core beliefs that I started with were strength is greater than power, wisdom is greater than knowledge, and integrity is greater than reputation.
That's what's up, bro.
And that feeds into what we were talking about before, as well as how people seek dominion and manipulate the situation. That's power. To be strong is to be versatile. To be strong is to be well endowed. To be strong is to have be a master of none, jack of all trades, and to have these disposable arts to express yourself however you want. There's a difference, and use your strength to be able. The end game is ultimately to use it towards a better good benefit, not profit, but benefit for everyone.
I love that you keep saying that. You keep hitting on because I watched this dude on YouTube. It's called Company Man, and the channel's so dope. It's a really concentrated 15-20 on companies. Some are old, some are new, but almost every single company that's tipped the Forbes list, so shady. The common denominator is shady.
That's unfortunate because you're supposed to take care of people who take care of you, and that's unfortunately. I mean, just because bad has been normalized doesn't make it right. Amen. Akira Kurosawa, the person who created Seven Samurai, Rashomon, different films in the 50s. He said something like, in a mad world, the sane are mad. Another way of saying that is, I took it from Samurai X. He said something to the effect of,
doesn't it kind of pertain to, in books that have been written way before our time?
Oh no, it's a recurring theme.
As far as what was wrong will be right, what was right will be wrong. And what's weird though is because I'm always playing devil's advocate in my head, and I know whether it's people listening to the show or people that are looking for self growth, and it is tough because we grew up in our generation. I think it was very fake it till you make it. It was a common saying, and I'm sure it's happened before many generations before that. But I remember when our immediate generation was starting to be told that, and growing up with movies like The Wall Street and things of that nature. There is a fantastic thing about having an increase in finances. It's wonderful. It's a fantastic. I'm not going to sit here and say that having more money than I did when I was 15 has been horrible. No, not at all. But the responsibility factor increases, and the responsibility of not only the actual fiscal, but making sure that it doesn't saturate and become. Remember, one of my favorite bad guys was Venom, when the black things, the tar starts to take, which I'm playing on Super Nintendo, by the way. I got so much to tell. Yeah, I have an emulator on the Mac, and I've been playing it. But the point is like, once it starts to consume you, I think there's a fine line. And as all of my buddies that I've grown up with that were in the 30-0 game, it's weird. It can be very. We see it on a constant daily basis about what we're supposed to be, who you're supposed to be with, what you're supposed to look like. And I'm telling you, man, the people that I can't stop wanting to be like are those that got a little bit of a smell to them, don't usually look the best, from the outside. They're real. And it's been a blessing because I'm finding them. They're easier to find too. Isn't it funny? Yeah. Like it's easier to find. I'm speaking for myself, by the way. It's easier to find someone in a crowd who's got a little bit of a smell to them versus everyone who's got the Giorgio Armani. Because if smell becomes the common denominator, when you've got the cologne on you, figuratively and literally, the guys that are out there just kind of keeping it real. And I'm not like comparing that if you're grungy and you smell, then you're awesome. It's just, you seem to probably be happier with who you are.
No, I get the intention.
You know what I mean? Like and I feel like one thing that I find to be really fascinating about you digitally, more because I don't see you that much physically anymore, but because of this social medium that we live in, I find once again, dude, I'm going to say it a billion times talking to you today, is that I want to emulate that type of vulnerability. I'm very proud of you.
And that's also what I was holding my tongue, but I wouldn't speak on what you were saying as well. There's a duality to fake it till you make it, because imitation is the highest form of flattery. And that's how anyone learns, period, because you submit to an authority that knows more than you, and open yourself up and be receptive to what people are saying. Now, taking on becoming an apprentice in that way, that's beautiful. That's the way you should look at it. But likewise, with great strength, with great power comes great responsibility. And that's also what I want to offer up in light of, Venom and stuff like that, because, and this theme crosses over to DC as well, like absolute power. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. At some point, there's a Venom verse, and they take over I'm deep into mythology of comics, theology, different things, because they all have implicit lessons as well. Like, before I don't mean to be rude, I just wanted to really quickly go on to your site and share the link and stuff.
Yeah, for sure, man. But as you're doing that, dude, like I said, when I love when you're posting, when you're doing your kakarot. When you're doing
push-ups now.
when you're playing handball, right? I'm not kidding you, dude. When I'm watching that, it means I'm so proud of you. And not because I say that in a loving way, not because I'm like here. I'm proud of you because I want to be like that. I'm proud of you because I feel that and of course, the silver lining to this as well is that I know you're not perfect. I don't know what your flaws are, but
in it, you know,
that's, and I love that you really do, man. And you know what's funny is you grow up with like anybody who actually does pick on somebody. It literally is like it's the epitome of jealousy. You know, it's funny. You know what I mean? So like we didn't know that growing up, but as you get older, you're like,
yeah,
of
I had
course,
to realize that late in life that people are very spiteful and very
Yeah.
vindictive.
I didn't know it either, but of course you grow up as you grow up, you realize that, you know, of course some of this stuff is cliche, but it is so true. Hurt people, etc. You know, but dude, I gotta say, if there's one quality about you that if I were to like, you know, I would want that jewel of like, do you?
I just mean to keep like,
yep.
We're good.
Is I don't know a lot of people that are, you know, because vulnerability can be used a lot. You people, oh, I'm vulnerable, and they're like showing you them, you know, on top of the Taj Mahal, figuratively speaking, and they're like, okay, well, I know that's. I'm talking about being real, and you're real, man.
Thank you.
You got a real, but because, and if we'll get there, I'm sure, but just where.
It's hard to pinpoint. I mean, I can explain chronologically and then give an entire overlay and then talk about different themes of how I learned.
How about this though? What was there a common denominator that was like, what's the most consuming kryptonite that you do deal with? Like Anthony Wells deals with like
my biggest vice,
yeah,
in all honesty, and being completely transparent, was drugs.
Really?
I lived in a blur for the last 10 plus years, and I conquered that somehow, some way, as you know, especially with ego and self and ego.
What type of drugs were you?
I mean,
anything and everything.
I had a large resume and stuff. I was lost, and this was amidst a lot of things because I was using it not necessarily just for a crutch or I was using it for insight and looking into things, as well as cope with like anything and everything, like to just continuously feed into it, to be able to soothe myself, as well as to, you know, escape, you know. And it was hard to get my head around it because of all the things that were going on, all the you know, the pain, the loss, the suffering, abandonment, abuse, neglect, being excommunicated, and from every group I ever went to, being treated as a pariah, basically wandering around nomadically, having to go from place to place, home to home.
So you were like
having a really hard life, dying twice.
Decade heavy on some serious. This is your business. But you're not. I'm sure it wasn't. You weren't smoking weed. I mean, combined with.
Yes,
I mean, you're talking about some pretty.
Things were getting pretty bad.
Damn,
I'll just
bro.
put it that way, as in a general way.
That's your business.
And this was in light of other things happening, like, you know, insane loss. My mom developed, after having 12 surgeries from all the things that happened to her, she developed lymphoma. And, you know, this all happened at a very, very hard time where I overreacted and did something, and basically had just jumped on a bus. And then I learned this, and it destroyed me.
You literally jumped on a bus?
I jumped on a bus and went to use the go-to Chinatown bus, went off to Virginia Beach like none.
How old are you?
At that time, and you're jumping around a lot.
That's again, okay.
You know, at that time, I must have been something like 17 or 18 years old, and went to my aunt's because things were very strained. And I don't mean because we always have like a closed door policy as far as family business stuff, but I would want to speak on it because it's important, you know. But you know, that destroyed me. To a point where, you know, realizing that she was upset because finding out, you know, the biopsies that was the case destroyed me.
Damn.
It sent me to a place that was psychotic, where I broke down because she's my everything. You know.
How long were you gone for?
I mean, I was gone for a few months. You know, at some point they came back and got me, and then I realized this, and then the guilt, because my mom and I have been through a good bit,
right?
A lot.
I mean, your mom's your rock.
Yeah, but we've had to see so much, and yeah, again, I don't want to get in the families. I don't want to disrespect them, but you know, I would want to speak on it just to speak of how strong she is.
She sounds like a superwoman.
She is very strong. You know?
Yeah, man, I can feel it.
To attest to who she is as a person, you know, for one, she taught me how to write. Two, we went from that situation, like I was saying, as far as the whole poverty thing. She let us stay with our grandparents for a little bit. In the time, she came in the interim. She came back and she went to Harvard, or not Harvard, Pace University. She has her master's now.
God bless.
When she went from the time that she dropped us off time and came back, she moved into the co-ops that my grandparents and I were all living in. When we were living in the Riverside, it was Lower East Side of Grand and FDR. These were co-ops. They were pretty much like right below, probably like brownstones. But amazing woman. But we had to see a lot, and we all suffered a lot. My mom, she was battered. Like a lot of things happened, and we had to see a lot. Yeah, I don't mean to get into different things.
Man, it's you.
But I love that woman. I'd do anything for her.
You guys talk pretty regularly?
I've had to attest to my feeling, my love of her. Like, let me just put it this way. I mean, besides, standing in place and trying to defend her. When I was 10 years old, we were in a car accident on 95 when the Broncos won the Super Bowl. John Elway. Okay, 98. And we're driving up from Maryland. There was a guy, they were switching back and forth driving. He fell asleep on the wheel with all of us in the car.
Damn.
We had an Acura Integra. The seats were folded down. I was in the back. I had my head towards the driver's seat. I was right behind the driver, but the seat pushed down. Now, when he had fallen asleep, hit the median, swerved back on the road again, regained control of the car, tipped another car, spun out into the woods. Luckily, we somehow survived. That was 10. Okay. I fell back into the seat backwards in a cradle position, and the impact of the car almost broke my spine in half. I always walk. My hip, there's still a scar here.
I see it.
My hip is actually twisted above one side.
You got a whack.
So I always, every now and then my spine, everybody back goes out. I get a pinched nerve, sourdoughy pain. I remember waking up like that. I was asleep. I woke up like that. I was bouncing around the car, broke the window with, the back windows, blade in the sea of glass. All my video games were thrown all over the place. And at some point, I'm literally walking on 95, picking up my video games, like in shock. And they're like, no, dude, you have to sit down.
I'd be doing the same thing, to be honest with you.
And I'm picking up games. I'm like, no, dude, this is Final Fantasy VII. It's scratched. Like,
right. It's over.
I'm picking up games off the highway. And they had to take me, put me down in a neck brace, like, you should not move. The guy who was driving, he got his pelvis smashed because the steering wheel. Right. My mom, she got whiplash. She got a burn, like it burned her skin. She got various broken bones. My sister broke her arm. I almost had my spine snapped in half. Looked like I still walk. Went to the hospital, and I just remember falling in and out of consciousness. When they gave me that warm blanket, it knocked me out. I was gone for 3 days. And I remember just waking up hearing her scream. Falling asleep. Waking up hearing just in the ER. And at some point, I went to the bathroom, and I looked in the mirror, and my whole back was discolored, and I couldn't hold my weight, and I just dropped. And I woke up again. Oh, no, you're good. I appreciate it. Yeah. So,
what were we then? How old were we then?
That was 10 years old. So I'm in a gurney. My sister comes in. She's like, it comes in now because I keep falling out. She's like, my arm, it's yellow, like that arm was broken. Fell asleep again. At some point, and this is what I mean to offer up by the story as far as my love for her in my own mind as far as protecting her, I was like, we have no insurance. I don't want my mom to suffer. Nothing's wrong with me.
Damn.
So I walked it off. Yeah, looking back, I regret it, obviously, but that was my way of protecting her, and that's one of many. Man, I can go on. There's so much because that's the thing about compassion. Compassion with in terms of suffixes, prefixes, and the roots and all that stuff breaks down to compassion. With pain, you learn other people's pain. You have sensitivity of pain.
So you had. I'm proud of you, man. 10 years, you were heavy on the iceberg. I can imagine. But 10 years. One of the I had someone on the show not too long ago that was super candid and let some 2.5, 3 years or so, he was on that pill game, and he got out, and I'm mad proud of him. And I never knew it, and I grew up with the guy, and I won't call him out now, but he shared with it on the show. So I mean, it's there. But I'm so proud of him, man, and it was so fascinating to me because, dude, I've had my own path, but I've had it pretty. I've had a lot of outside exposure, so to speak, that would have caused me to do something cuckoo. You know what I mean? So I feel like I played good. I should have played good. I didn't really have a reason
to be that way. To be a straight hour was good,
because
ultimately that's what I'm coming back into, is that understanding of you're on the road.
But I empathize because once again, I'm saying I don't really have. I can't take much credit because I had it pretty good. You know what I mean? Like I didn't have a lot of outside exposure of anything. If I were
overall, it comes down to your conviction.
True, that's true too.
That's good. That's very good.
But I absolutely can't imagine. I look at what people have gone through, and when they share things, and I say, I don't know what I would have done because I had it pretty peaches and cream, so to speak. I had my own emotional baggage, but I wasn't really dealing with much outside adversity. My point is with you, what was the tipping point after a decade heavy and whatever it was?
I mean, this all snowballs because each and everything that happened, and I was getting in this 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, thinking about the stuff in terms of the hypothetical conversation I would have with you, and thinking about the things that happened and transpired yesterday at Finn's and stuff. I mean, which was awesome. It just made me realize a lot of things, and one of the things I realized was because I looked into psychology as well, DSM and all the different things, as well as I was just reading Sigmund Freud's On Dreams the other day. I mean, these things that are old, political science, all that stuff. But I realized that sense of vulnerability and internalizing things and constantly working on it, whether I was right or wrong, and just completely blame myself, even though I probably shouldn't have in each instance, that's probably a coping mechanism I developed in the sense of just being that pariah, being constantly the whipping boy or something to that effect, to where I didn't understand that, no, I'm an asshole.
Right.
I just said, what did I do wrong? And it's a very masochistic kind of way of looking at how I treated it in terms of self-evaluation. The last 21 years, since 1997, I've been writing, and my writing has mainly been diving and delving into this introspective kind of look at myself to critically, meticulously try to figure out what I can do.
So have you always been someone that when there's conflict to any sort, good or bad, you're more of let me figure out, let me check myself best. Before I try to that's what's up.
Best. In keeping with martial arts, because again, at some point, the Japanese jiu-jitsu, ninjutsu, taekwondo, imitated things, boxing. The highest virtue of martial arts is fighting without fighting, tactics and strategy, evading the situation. Don't diss them, dismiss them, walk away. Being a mediator, peacekeeper, philanthropist, being someone who's philosophically sound and trying to. And that's also why I kept referring to Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. He talked about what is goodness, and this also feeds into the understanding of Jedi and Sith, or Bansen Shukai, which is the art of ninja, or way of ninja, and Kosa Bushido. I say that to say this, that basically what he offered up is that what is a good man but a bad man's teacher? What is a bad man but a good man's job? True goodness is shouldering things and looking out for one another, regardless. That as good people, we see these things that people do, that they're trying to undermine you or one up you, but we disregard it because overall the mission isn't that petty. Right. And likewise, I mean, if I had to give you a visual, it's kind of like, I think it was the second Lord of the Rings, when the King of Rohan, he was basically taken over with the sickness that he got a spell put onto him, basically, where the guy who's his advisor kept warping his reality, and Gandalf came and freed him from that. That pretty much is akin to what I'm talking about. That's what evil is. There are no evil people. Evil is an opaqueness. It's a film that you see through. It's just a thing that overtakes you, but there are no absolutes in life. People are not evil.
I love that. That's dude, we could go bad, it's a powerful statement.
one last thing, and I hate to
do your thing, baby.
That's another thing I realized. Again, looking into these things and practicing being a martial artist, or just looking into things and finding universal truth constantly, trying to see what overlaps and connecting the dots in terms of folklore and legend and theology, different things, stories, anything, everything. I realized that in terms of the origin story of Adam and Eve and stuff like that, I believe that when people ate of the apple, whether it be a metaphorical, poetic thing or literal, whatever the case may be, they took onto themselves knowledge of everything. But the thing is, mind is an organ, and we can only comprehend but so much. So we made associations. Light and dark aren't on the same spectrum as good and evil. Light and dark compose everything. They make up reality in terms of like visuals, but and also physical, because different light, like God particle has light. But everything was spawned out of that, where it's like everything became an antithesis to something. You distinguish yourself in one way, there's automatically you're saying that you're this means you're not any of those other things. And people made associations, and you can pretty much attribute racism or any other thing to that. Anytime someone describes or expresses themselves and that ideology falls under a certain umbrella, then that describes when people have become to put labels. Same thing with Darwin. Darwin did all this stuff as far as toxicity. And I was talking about this yesterday of Saturday Night Live. He said something like the acronym would be, please come over for some gay sex. Phyllis, class, order, family, genus, species. He was doing that in the backdraft attempt to try to find the essence, the primordial ooze that we all have an origin. It's the same. And what it was spun into was social Darwinism, elitism, Mein Kampf mentality, genetic superiority, stuff of that nature. People have taken things and turned it and perverted it. And that's another thing I definitely don't do, and speaks to me who I am, is that the bar will never change. The truth doesn't care. The truth is going to be truth regardless. And what you do in the dark comes to light. However, you should never pervert truth to your own ends. You should never pervert truth to your own ends. You shouldn't, because if I am not able to meet this standard, that's a flaw of my own. I'm not going to pervert the truth or lessen the bar or curve the grade or write into the Constitution or amend this or that to basically meet different things to excuse myself, and to overall undermine and doom people who are trying to progress, whatever the case is. I mean, there's many applications.
No, it's really powerful,
but it's true. I mean, the association that people made was good and evil, light and dark, same, and people limit themselves.
Where are you at right now? Are you someone who has hope in humanity right now?
I always have, and I always will. I mean, I try my best, and I know
you got I'm getting more coffee. Do you have a Goku mentality, or are you a Vegeta mentality?
If I had to liken myself to any one character, I mean, because I've been many characters through many different times in life, I would probably say I'm close to Naruto. Naruto,
can you
Naruto Uzumaki, where he basically was, outcast, and then he basically.
Is this a Dragon Ball character?
No, it's just from Naruto.
Oh yeah, you got me beat. See, I don't have that one.
Another thing. That's from Samurai Champloo. The pen is mightier than the sword, but keep a sword handy if it fails. Berserk, badass fucking anime. Another one.
Yeah.
Man.
But so you have, for those if you didn't hear me, I'm relating to, you have, if you were a superhero character, you're kind of like once again, would you say you're more of a Goku or a Vegeta or like a Piccolo? Like, do you know what I mean?
Like, saying identify the most, at least right now with Naruto, where basically he is trying to break the cycle and unite people into.
So you do have hope, and you haven't become jaded. And
I try not to. It's a constant battle,
Yeah.
Just try to be honest, try to be genuine, goodwill, transparent, try to keep focus on things. That's why I also lined this out, because at first I really wanted to get into each thing and just out of a pure sense of like being triumphant and feeling so accomplished. I was like, I want people to know where I came from. It's almost like an like retribution, to be able to say, like, because I was always like this, if I had to also speak on to the situation, just like, you don't discover anything, you uncover things. that you will come into your own regardless anyway. Same thing with change. You're not transforming, you're just metamorphosing. It's within you to do these things. And Masato Musashi, the two-handed swordsman, changed, military genius, only swordsman never be killed, legend, like Jubei and different people like that as well. He basically wrote book of the five rings. And long story short, he basically said, don't seek anything outside of yourself, that everything that you have, that you can use at your disposal. And just don't seek without, but seek within. That bleeds into the thing about strength and power. Strength is like AM. Power is like PM. No, not FM, sorry. Strength is like a bonfire. Power is like weaving strings over an expanse, but they can cut those strings. You know, when you're in a plane, you can hear the news because it's AM. Its amplitude goes up, frequency goes across. But I mean, something similar. Don't seek dominion over other people. It's fleeting.
Yeah.
Only strengthen yourself and enable yourself to be able to do what you can and what you should do. You know, existentialism.
Are you in a position right now? Are you getting good sleep? You hitting REM? Are you a sleeper?
Man,
are you a restless man?
I've actually changed over from being a night owl to waking up on instinct, 6:30, 7 in the morning, going out and working out every day.
You know what's weird? I'm a night owl by, I think it's just going to be part of my DNA for the rest of my life. I'm at my happiest having a lifestyle where I'm up late.
Most people who are very innovative minds and tinker and stuff are into the creative realms. They're usually people.
I've heard that. Yeah. But I feel like you're more of a night owl by
nature. Yeah. That's how I've always been. But I've only done this as far as trying to in a taxi cab kind of like discipline kind of thing where I'm trying to like, you know, early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. I'm trying to like revise myself and to really pull myself off the bootstraps and do exactly take off, you know, and do what I'm wanting to do to be able to facilitate change in myself to then enact change in the world that do good.
There is a lot of value into that. It's boring, but it's working. I'm doing it happened by consequence. I went really hard in the paint about the last week or two of September, and I was misbehaving a bit, Camille and I said, I'm just going to dry out. So all of October, no partying, no playing, bored, but I'm up super early, rocking and rolling. But once again, it's good. It's, I guess, everything in balance, you know, you're good. But I could tell you one thing that I love that you keep hinting on inadvertently is the fact that you keep mentioning that you haven't always been here.
Oh.
And I think that that's so powerful because when I meet with people, whoever they are, whatever their financial status is, no matter what your cool acronym is behind your name, good or bad, the fact of the matter is that you weren't always that. No, and in this season right now, I feel like I'm loving you, man. I feel like you're in a good season, you know, and I've been watching you online and I feel like, once again, dude, it's redundant, but I love that you put yourself out there and just going, this is who I am. And you're saying that I'm not perfect by being you.
Definitely never going to be perfect.
Which was awesome because a lot of people, it's tough to put yourself out there in a social medium. Okay. And to know that you're not perfect, and it's great, and I love it, and you're a filter-free person, man.
I try my
best. And if I had to like title you with something because I'm all about putting people in my own personal Rolodex of what they are to me, because this day is very special to me, as everyone that comes on this show, because this is my own personal diary. I'll get to look back on that, and I'm someone who also has a very intimate understanding of mortality. I know we won't always be here. Today may be my last day. And now there's something that I've left. There's a little bit of a legacy. There's video and audio footage that my wife may be able to enjoy, family, friends, and vice versa. There are people that are on this show. Thank God, I don't think yet they've gone to the next place, but it's something that will be very dear to me.
Oh no, it'll reverberate through many people's lives, you know.
And where you at right now, I could tell you, man, it's a good. I'm just, once again, to say I'm proud of you is not a good dictation of like how it's just like I want to be like you.
I appreciate that. That's a very high compliment.
I think if people extract one thing out of these episodes, it's that the people I'm sitting down with come from every walk of life, And this show is slowly but surely morphed into this Your Story, My Table. Because I don't know I still really don't know what I'm doing, so to speak. I just love this. And if there's one thing that resonates, it's that you are going through things. And I had a client over here yesterday that some people are very into this, and some people I have to kind of, because I know there's something there. This was one of those yesterday where I keep telling this particular person, I'm like, you have to do this. And the stories of hers is no grander or less than anybody else's. It's hers. But the point is, I feel like there's such breakthrough when you empathize and realize that it's a real world out there, and there's a lot of bad, but there's a lot of good. But one thing I like that you said today, and you firmly believe this, that evil is a filter.
Evil is a filter. Evil is a filter.
You don't think people come out.
People are entranced by evil, but they're not evil themselves.
So you feel that whatever this isn't, the conscious so interesting.
It very much is. Yeah. Passions and aggressions, duality, left and right. Yeah.
So fascinating. I believe I do agree with you. Not that this is an argumentative point, but I would imagine psychology would disagree with you firmly.
It's funny because,
by the way, if you want another one, you're more than okay.
I'm taking my time, I'm sipping. It's funny because, again, speaking on the psychology and the birth of psychology, the psyche comes out of the understanding of the conscious soul and the mind. I think, therefore I am, which speaks on to understanding finality of death as well. Because even if we don't have souls, even if there isn't a hereafter, your thought process is a wave itself. It's a physical thing. And who knows, maybe your thought in being conscious, flowing through medium, through matter and stuff, and crashing, is your soul basically having flashed an image or whatever, and then return to essence and basically becoming one with everything, because we're really just manifestations of all of everything. We're consciousness. That's this is just a vessel. This is just a membrane. We are just a bubble that's been drawn on the page. You know what I'm saying?
Do you think
our bodies are the line? Because we're still on that page.
Do you? Because I don't have a motive with this. So as far as after death, where are you at with that?
I'm content with it.
Do you believe that there's a
definitely is.
Yeah.
The signs are everywhere.
Yeah.
You can sense hand to God. A lot of people also liken it to feng shui. Even placement has a lot of significance. There's a saying like "dead man tell no tales," that they didn't necessarily speak to you, but things can be shown to you in irony and coincidence.
Yeah.
That's very real. That the easiest way to have a sensitivity to explain it, to learn it, is imagine what you're thinking inside of your head, what you're feeling, and what you're going through. The day-to-day things that are going on are not separate from what's going on in the external world. That when you're driving, let's say you're having a bum day and a song comes on, I was telling my friend the other day, I'm like, I just tripped over and destroyed my shoes in a pothole or something, and then Blue Suede Shoes comes on. I'm like, how funny is that? Right. It literally is things being transmitted to you, because, that's the ironies and funny things and happenings of life. But it's true. Yeah. Bad karma, good karma, nostalgia, 6 degrees of separation, things of that nature. They're very true. This is why I also look to other religions as well, because everyone has a piece of the puzzle. Everyone's completely right. It's a finger pointing to the moon. We're all just artists painting a model, and we all have different interpretations of the model, but it's absolutely true and beautiful. Mm-hmm. And each one is a rendition and a personal experience and a personal relationship with the art, with the model, as well as the artist, and what they're seeing through their filter. But that very phenomenon is perspective, and it should be respected. And people argue about the details, but the very same things that we tell our kids all the time. What was the moral of the story?
If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it.
Don't say it at all, right? What is the moral of the story? What's the good that you took out of it? What did it mean to you? Same thing with language. And I only picked up on this because I played Metal Gear Solid Code Walker. At some point, he's talking about language. And he's saying that destruction of language or assimilation of different people and having to force things onto someone, you're in destroying culture, destroying heritage or language, and assimilating people into whatever. You're taking away a unique perspective, a unique angle, a unique way of saying something that's very specific to someone. To say, like, I can say blue, I can say azure, I can say red, I can say crimson. Like these things have different understandings and different beauty to it and different lessons. Like, you know, everything has implicit, amazing, very deep beauty, and is has almost this residue where there's endless lessons in it. And you can learn from anything and everyone and anything and anyone, from gestures, from placement, from lessons. I like philosophy because, you know, in different riddles, maxims, proverbs, things of that nature, because it speaks to a great truth that you can learn in retrospect, you know, in terms of, because people who are older and wiser, they realize that you can't teach anyone. You can only make them think. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Like you can't force an opinion on someone. They have to accept it. So what they do is they offer up these things in riddles. Like my grandfather used to always say, you know, don't eat that. I mean, you took too much on your plate. I'm like, no, I got it. Your eyes are bigger than your stomach. Stuff like that. And you realize in hindsight, oh, man, he's been telling me this forever. Yeah. Oh, I learned it. You know, that's another thing that Lao Tzu also talked about, is like, in terms of the relationship between student and master, that at some point when the student realized, he says to himself, I learned to do this on my own. But it was encouraged as well. Like, and it's also tradition and stuff. I mean, like, you can keep going.
There's two things I could tell you that are new for me, and I'm learning to try to exercise constantly. Both were taught to me. One of which was by Adam Limnuni, a chiropractor here in town. Super into, would always try to teach me after seeking him for not only, you know, care for my physical, but would try to, I'm such a hypo where I would go there, and if I got hurt or I had to sprain something and I had a game 2 weeks from now, I'd be like, I got to get, you know, the panic is what is wrong, this. And this is years of trying to extract this. So this is just now probably happening within net, you know, 365 days after knowing him for 5+ years, and him saying to me in a very cool, calm demeanor, do this, which is stay positive. And once again, it sounds so cliche, but dude, I've noticed that my healing time when I do get injured, whether it's a sprain or this, and I'm talking physically, if I'm injured and I stay focused with saying, okay, I know I'm hurt. Let's not dive too deep into like what, let's figure out what it is. Let's figure out what the ramifications are here to get better. And then I'm not kidding you, dude. It's like, it's so profound to me and paramount, but to other people that probably figured this out many moons ago are like, this guy's, but it was a big deal for me. And that is, when I'm hurt now and I'm going through the process of getting healed, staying focused and not even focusing on it anymore, but realizing I'm hurt. So I don't go, I can't maybe hit the pitch. I have to realize that I'm injured, but the positive nature of staying focused on not allowing it to consume you, my healing times for the same types of injuries in the same types of places have significantly decreased in healing time by the fact of just staying sound mind. It's so powerful.
It very much is.
It's unbelievable. And combined with that, it's, once again, for little old me, it's a big deal. But for those that have maybe figured it out before me, then I love you and God bless. But it also translates into real life. I've noticed that when I'm thrown a curveball and I've got, whether it's a work issue, a life issue in general, I've noticed that just it all doesn't really matter. And not to sound morbid, but like it really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, not one person, not one thing, not anything around you is coming with you the minute those eyes close. So whether your bank account's hacked, whether your car's broken down, or God forbid someone's dead that's close to you, it really doesn't matter. And it matters emotionally, but where you're going with it now is your opportunity to stay in a realm of peace and execute precision and knowing, hey, I'm not going to allow this to debilitate me. It's powerful and it's hard. So I'm not saying it by no means. And I think one thing that I'm extracting from you is that always remind people in your audience is I've not always been here. No, so I haven't always exercised this, but it's new, it's fascinating, and it's working.
Life is an ever conscious, ever changing thing. It's a current. And, you know, the fastest way to move backwards is to stand still.
Yeah.
And, you know, being honest and transparent. The first page in the book of wisdom is acceptance and honesty. Speaking on to what you're saying, when I disappear, my world disappears with me. If a tree falls in a forest and no one's around to hear it, doesn't make a sound. I believe it does. But in terms of consciousness and stuff like that, we can only control ourselves. We can only do what we can in our own worlds to be able to then facilitate things and change things in reality externally. Existentialism. I liken it to being a blade. Like a blade has to be, in terms of how the process of making and forging a blade has to be broken down to its elemental form, be almost destroyed, to then be built back up to be indestructible and to be of use. People are no different. The process of life and the existential understands life and lessons and blessings and ups and downs. This all makes you who you are or who you're meant to be. It forges your soul to be able to do something. Now, what I'm on as far as why I do things, and I posted this a little bit ago, just yesterday. 5 in the morning kept me up. Was the understanding of the most excruciating thing for me would be to be an alarm clock that never rung. To be born without purpose and then I fulfill my destiny. Not so for me, but to be of use. And that's all I really want. Because God, if I hadn't that God, I'd have nothing. And He's got me through many a mix by a razor thin margin every time. And it's like the story of two footprints. He's walking along someone. There's two sets of footprints. At some point, there's only one set of footprints. He said, "Look, God, this is where you abandoned me. Where were you? You weren't there." He's like, "No, son, that's when I carried you." Ooh. That is the truth.
That's some good stuff right there.
And honestly, I do all this stuff to be of clear disdain, mind, body, and soul, to be able to carry out things with certainty, because ultimately it's not about me. It's about what I need to do. And that's all that really matters. That's the highest form of happiness and contentment I can have. And knowing that I'm starting to align with these things, I'm so happy, because I see in a very real way that I'm coming into my own. And it's funny also, you were talking about anime and who, as far as an avatar kind of thing, would liken myself to, friends and stuff, especially, we all had a different avatar. My friend Pete, he would be a pirate. I started off, I was a ninja. I would liken my friend Francisco. He'd probably be like something to the effect of like a Dark Knight if I were keeping it with the full Final Fantasy theme.
Yeah, son.
Pete, he would probably be a paladin or a monk or something to that effect. It just people just dude. And I would want to shout out my friends as well, like Pete, Christopher, Pete, John, Francisco, Neil, Carlos, Prima. I would throw Sasha in there.
Now, if you forget someone now, they'd be like, "Yo, bro, what it is?"
Yeah, I mean, there's so many people. For one, I contribute so much to, and it like I siphon a lot of wisdom off of, but these are all very close, very childhood friends I've known for decades. My closest friend, Chris, and the reason that I value him so much and hold him so dear is because, unlike myself, I'm constantly changing. He has never changed in that way, as far as being a straight arrow, having conviction,
like a good guy,
really good guy, very very successful. In the sense of, the highest form of success is health and happiness and contentment. And he's generated a lot of good things from it. He sleeps easy. He's taking care of things. He's doing good. And I'm really proud of him. But I always say that if I'm James Bond, he's my Q. Like, we've been being back and forth technologically, but he's also like, if I get a little deeper, have you ever seen the movie Fearless with Jet Li?
I had to have.
It followed the story of I think Young Jai. I don't want to butcher his name.
Yes, I've seen this. Yes,
Young Jai, where he basically created the Federation of Martial Arts with the belt system. Mm-hmm. He was a wushu master, gung fu master.
The bells.
Long story short, he had a friend that was very dear to him. That he was a fighter. The day and age, there were death waivers. People used to fight to the death. Like blood sport, like kind of traditions, and his friend was more on, the business side, was more of a practical person in terms of like step by step, in terms of the application of things and doing things in like a more pragmatic, logical way. But Jet Li's character he had passion. He wanted to rise to be the best, and at first fame, stardom, and stuff. I don't want to ruin the movie for you, but long story short,
no, I remember it now. I remember the bells. He had to get all the bells.
The bells.
In the movie, when they were like the samurai, they were trying to. He was teaching him how to fight, or maybe I have the wrong movie, but there was a samurai movie where he had to get. You know what? I messed up. That's the Ninja Turtles. Remember the Ninja Turtles? You had to get the bells off the guy without the bells ringing.
That also reminds me of Bleach a little bit. But bells. Damn, man. Is the one with Super Shredder? Or is the I don't.
You know, it's funny. I just rewatched the original Ninja Turtles. I swear it's the one like Shredder's making him. Oh wait, maybe it's the bad guys. Maybe it's the Foot Clan.
Oh yeah,
he's making him get the bells off,
was,
and the Ninja Turtle comes in and does it for him. Remember the little kid infiltrates
when they snuck in.
Boom!
And they hit him with a
smoke bomb
to rescue Master Splinter because he was tied up.
And he got all the bells, and they was holding them, and they're not one rung.
Yeah, that's some badass shit.
Yeah,
that's
sorry,
also,
I'm not.
That's also akin to when in terms of chi and essence and stuff, like trying to, put out all the candles.
Yeah,
stuff like that.
Did you on a tangent because we're gonna do this? We're gonna have these.
I'm sorry, not chi reiki.
I'm sure you've seen the on YouTube the old clips of like the non-punch hit and all that. You believe in that stuff?
Very much so.
Me too.
Very much so. Lending to what the understanding of that. I used to always think in a sci-fi kind of way that we only Albert Einstein only accessed 5% of his brain or something to that effect. And I was to think that we were just unevolved, but the reality is, most likely, is that we were more evolved when we were more in tune with nature and ourselves. That it would definitely explain magic. It would definitely explain, in terms of astral bodies and being in tune with everything, being in harmony with everything. Being words, language were formed out of runes, alchemic things, and understandings, incantations, in that sense of like. This is also why I don't abuse words, and why it's like kin to heresy, because when you speak on something, realistically what you're doing is you're alluding to a greater thing as far as an infinite force and infinite understanding. When you misspeak of truth or justice or God or love or any of these big theme things that, they should drive people.
Right.
They're things that you try to align best with that are different themes that are overall different elements in reality.
Right.
It's kind of like the Green Lantern Corps or the Red Lantern or this, you're playing with a lot of what, in the sense of like perverting the truth and heresy and stuff like that. You can look at the best examples of things being twisted to people's own ends is the word God and the word love. And look what that's gotten. That's gotten crusades. That's gotten endless wars. That's gotten people brutalized and raped and killed and all types of stuff because of those two words that were nothing but pure and good. But people
crazy.
Perverted them and turned into some political thing to where it's been used to rule people's lives or completely confuse and decimate people's lives. And that's what. Personally, I didn't say that I loved anyone until I was 15 years old because I knew the power,
the value of it.
It's like witchcraft sometimes. Oh yeah, I love you.
Right.
No, man. Like, do you have a moral obligation to speak the truth?
It's powerful stuff. I take you as somebody too. Are you the kind of guy that you would say to somebody when I don't know, but this is what I believe? Like, I feel like you preface it with, I feel like it's the kind of guy I feel like you are. Like, I'm not sure, but this is what I believe.
Give a little disclaimer as far as like, I'm gonna be respectful of your beliefs,
right? And
I'm not gonna throw things. I'm not gonna jam things on your throat as far as like, no, it's this way or that way. I'm not gonna dictate to you what your truth is. That's ridiculous. But the thing about it is that, like you were saying, I try to come as far as a disclaimer to say, a preface or whatever, to be able to say like. This is what, like, going back to that round table understanding, this is what knowledge and what wealth and things I've accumulated in the time since I've last seen you. Right. This is what holds true to my life. And this is what I've merited as being true and universal and things I've connected the dots on. Right. I want to hear what you have to say. And then have a good, respectful conversation. Right. And be able to come into a new awareness, Right. If you can't come into a new awareness, learning from one another, come into a compromise. Yeah. There's always going to be some kind of middle ground. You can set anything on opposite extremes, but there will always be an in-between where you can meet and understand the value and the merit in what somebody's saying, because people are made to look radicalized and crazy and extreme because the powers to be, the people who are behind, the gears and chains, the Wizard of Oz or something, are trying to make this illusionary. They're having this illusionary narrative of like, no, you're this, you're that, portray this way, that way, ministry of truth, ministry of love.
Right.
War is peace, ignorance is strength, and freedom is slavery, and all those things.
Right.
Like these things they've even used as tactics throughout time. Well, we can talk about Machiavelli's The Prince. We could talk about Sun Tzu or any of the other things. Alexander, there's so many different things that have become tactics and strategies to
right.
have dominion over people and divide and conquer, and it's not necessary. It's not necessary.
I agree with you.
That's not necessary. I'm sorry. That's not necessary. War is not necessary. War in a very psychotic way. How Alexander the Great used to look at it was it's used to cultivate the world, that you have to mingle the bloods and conquer everybody and have everybody being under one rule to be able to unite humanity. And to a certain degree, it did work, which wasn't necessarily the right thing. It didn't necessarily have to happen, but it's no longer needed because we live on a sphere. We live on a world that's round. Like, you're not going to expand over an endless horizon and keep being able to expand. You're overlapping people constantly through warfare. And eventually you're flirting with disaster to where somebody's going to push a button, or even the whole thing with the arms race, like nuclear proliferation. Oh, we're going to have weapons because they have weapons. World War I didn't teach anything to anyone. People kept allying, having arms race, and then like that, everything, power cake.
Here's my, if I could let it consume me, but the two things that I found very fascinating when I dive into, once again, that company man and watching how companies have consumerism is, I feel, and this happened, this was BC stuff. So consumerism has been around. It's not just Coca-Cola, but I always find it fascinating to try to think, when as a species did we start to, instead of exchanging goods and services, which I would imagine was the way of the prehistoric way, whatever civilization you want to date back to, there wasn't currency. And I always find it fascinating of who was the first, and it probably happened simultaneously throughout this beautiful, huge sphere. But when did currency form where it was no longer meeting at the table and saying, oh, where do you have it, your tribe?
It's very difficult to pinpoint because, again, also it's a social phenomenon people are coming into as well. Likewise, with today's day and age, people are becoming more enlightened and aware of the same kind of progression of the human race. Yeah, hunters and gatherers, farmers settling down, society, laws, Hammurabi's code, eye for an eye, different things like that nature of like trying to settle down to survive. Currency. It was a good idea, and we had humble beginnings. Universal barter system. You're not trading chickens for getting your teeth pulled. Right. You have a universal barter system to be able to meritocracy. You basically have a way to benefit society with what you can do, what you can lend,
right?
And you're compensated so you can take care of yourself. It makes perfect sense. But the thing is that throughout time, again, that's not even needed either, because throughout time, it has become something the polar opposite, to where it went from something that's supposed to be united and very motivating force for people to offer what they can to better society, to do if everybody did exactly what they're here to do and express their gifts completely and honestly, who they are and what they can do, not only would they be offering up things that only they themselves can do, but we would be limited only by our imagination.
Amen. You know, it's crazy to say that, because I, once again, this new way of trying to feel about, if everybody really literally worried about the 6 inches in front of their face and those around them that they were meant to, or either you brought people into this earth, or I feel like a higher being kind of said, this is your tribe. Outside of that, 6 inches in front of your face, man. For instance, if you want to talk about it from a Greenpeace perspective, everyone plant one tree, boom. Everyone pick up one piece of trash, or whatever use you want to do, whether it's give a hug, be nice. I don't give a damn what it is. But if people just,
that's what we should aspire to do.
Yeah, man. And once again, this isn't something I grew up with, meaning, I've had to learn that it really does start in your backyard. And it's so powerful that if your backyard is poopy, it's okay. It's cool. You can ask for a helping hand, but don't go out trying to till another man's land when you're not tending to yours. Something I've learned. Yeah. Don't go out there trying
stones at a glass house.
Amen. Don't go out there trying to act as if you're something out there. And once again, your farm and the people in which you have a responsibility to tend to, you're not. Because I feel like what it is what was one of the most hurtful things that was said to me. I'm sure this is the common denominator across all people in grade school or whatever place you are in life, was being called a poser. Right? Like that I remember being called. I mean, that was, I remember if you called someone a poser, I mean, you're
basically saying that you're disingenuous.
Yeah.
You're not a
I
real
remember.
person.
And I mean, here's the irony though, right? We all were, and we all are to some degree. And at that age, who isn't trying to, am I a skater guy? Am I a surfer guy? Am I a soccer guy?
What we're talking about is imitation is the highest form of flattery.
Right.
And it's not always necessarily a jaded thing.
Right.
It could also just be like you're just siphoning wisdom or different things and skill sets off of different people. There's nothing wrong with that.
But it's powerful once you find your rhythm and to embracing who you are. And I was thinking about this when I was on my way to soccer yesterday, and I was seeing all the beautiful peoples running the bridge and walking in this, and everyone's got their own look, their own jive, but they're all pursuing one common thing. And that's self-preservation, whether they're trying to look better, whether they're trying to feel better, whether they're fighting an element or whether they're trying to evade an element. They're still pursuing something, and there was such beauty in it. And I'm not trying to sound like Gandhi over here, but it was a beautiful moment that I had as I'm on my way to soccer, which is a very special thing for me because it's my crack to get away. And for those 90 plus minutes, nothing else matters. And I'm watching these people, and I thought, once again, how beautiful is it when you look at somebody else and just say, what can we do together versus what don't we agree on? Because I feel, and as self-enlightenment is becoming more, and and people are educating themselves by means of these mediums, the internet, and communicating. And I do believe, and I do agree with you, I have hope in humanity as well. And once again, not to blow him up, but Rogan's, by his way of dealing with people on that show, is so fascinating because he lets these people be who they are. And I can tell he doesn't agree with all of them. And that's the point. That's really the epitome of this whole thing called life. You don't have to agree with anybody.
Yeah.
You don't. And they think that and I feel like it's happening. I think people are starting to realize that remove yourself from government for 10 minutes, remove yourself from everything you think that's important for just 10 minutes. And I guarantee you're going to be you are always going to be a creature who's apt to pick something up when someone drops it. Isn't that ironic? If I'm behind you and you drop something, then I would say it's safe to say 90+% of the general human being in any country, any place, any galaxy is likely to inform you and alert you that you have dropped something of probably personal belongings.
And a lot of times it comes from almost like an unconscious.
Isn't it powerful?
Yeah.
And I do agree with you. And you said a lot of amazing things today that I do believe that we are birthed with love, or whatever you want to describe it, agape or not. I believe that we as human beings have this unconscious, conscious, very unexplained.
And that's why I think
so
like
fascinating.
Babies probably have a divine intellect because they accept and know this and they bask in it.
Yep.
And when you're learning, you're pretty much dumbing yourself down to societal understandings to be able to communicate whatever. But ultimately, the understanding of being alive is the most crystalline and innocent when you're a kid. And I had to speak to, I really forgot where I was. I apologize.
No, on that note, though, that's why you're special to me. And that's why those that are in my circle, and I don't really have a circle, but those that I was telling my neighbor this the other day. It's like, I literally see you more than I see my own blood family. And we were going through a trial and tribulation as neighbors. And I presented him with, what would you do if you were me? And I was treating you the way that you were treating me. And this man's got 30-ish plus years on me. And I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but I figured, how would I want to be talked to if I was causing somebody pain and grief and negativity. I was affecting you negative to some level. And if I was feeling and I'm telling you, man, it was a very unique moment for me in my growth as a human being, because I was able to see from another man's perspective that he didn't really have an answer, but he could see that I was coming in love. I wasn't coming shaking a fist. I wasn't coming demanding. I came as a human being saying that you are affecting me negatively in the following ways. And even though I didn't use that exact vernacular, but I literally did say to him, what would you do? Help me. And it's so weird because I've never probably done that in my life, where I met adversity with asking for help by the cause. Isn't that weird?
That's a milestone.
It was really powerful. And I
really
walked
good.
back in. I had played like 3 hours of soccer in the middle of the day. I don't usually play in the daytime. It was a Sunday afternoon. Came home, just wanted to pass out. And this guy isn't some diabolical creature. He's just a very noisy workman. He's always doing something. And he uses this one particular power tool that I swear comes from hell. It's just one of those like whatever it is. And point is, I went over there, cool, calm, and collective, and just said, what do we have to do to find some kind of solution of love?
I feel like we're kindred spirits, man, because very much, yeah.
So it was powerful though, because I walked back in and I was like, I feel like I've learned so much from that day that the next person that causes me grief or ask them for help.
It'll equip you with
crazy.
It'll equip you with the know-how and things like to be able to
He literally, and it was like we made love, man. And you know what I mean? Like I could tell I've been here a decade-ish here. Like I could tell homie was like, this is real and I'm hurting you and I'm sorry. He didn't say it, but it was understood. There was no malice, and we left with no discord. And I've never done that before. And I could tell you this too, man. What was super trippy was it's so weird when you tell somebody that like, hey man, it's so crazy when some of these things, once again, you brought up too, like, and we grew up with some of these sayings and like, do you know how powerful it is? I've noticed when I'm riding my bike and you smile at people for no reason. It's
infectious.
Everyone smiles back, first of all. And those that don't are probably doing it after they drove by and they may make fun of you about it, but there's something that triggers. And once again, a subliminal.
That's a
primitive,
an understanding of paying it forward and good karma as well.
Yeah. And I love it. And I'm probably known as this weird dude wearing girl shorts, riding my bike around, smiling and waving at people. And I noticed that it's such, yet again, breaking barrier. And I'm not here to teach you anything. I'm just here to figure it out together. And that's why I like you. And that's why I'm, once again, saying that I'm proud of you is not a dictation of what I can't really put into words, but I try to emulate your personality on a daily, hourly, minutely basis. And I think it's powerful because I know you well enough to know that you're not out there preaching, brother. I know you're not. Like, you're not. But what I've learned at a very young age was tell me about your God without speaking. And dude, it's been the most amazing paradigm shift of thought and lifestyle when there's something attractive about you. By consequence of that, the people around you ask you, how did you get your oats to grow so good? That, at that point, my belief is you now have a segue to say, this is what I did. I still don't know if it's going to work, but my oats are there. So there's proof in the pudding.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you want oats.
And you have a good mindset on that because too many people focus on the ingredients, not the proof in the pudding.
Right. So I'm not even sure. These oats might not be your flavor, but here's how I've tended to my farm. And it's happening. And I've noticed that speech is I would say speech in general is probably the most overly abused form of anything, of weaponry in human civilization, is speech. And those that don't have it, it's a fact that common denominator, unfortunately, that handicap of not being able to speak is not a general thing. Unfortunately, it is a handicap not to speak. It is a normal, if that word is even make sense, but it is a normal characteristic of a human being species to have audible speaking capabilities. I find it fascinating that this is actually a question because I don't know if this is true or not. Is it true that sign language is universal, or are there different?
That I'm not too sure.
Isn't that interesting?
I was actually at some point on a bus with deaf kids, and they taught me how to say my name.
Nice,
but they
dude.
also use it because, again, I was in the juvenile system. I basically wanted to go in there to basically do what I can, catch them through the cracks. Because I wanted to be a teacher, but I felt like got out of the plan, so I went there to lend what I knew. And they also use that, so it's possible. It's possible.
I would imagine
different examples,
isn't it? Because when I'm thinking about, once again, I do a lot of, once again, not trying to sound like Gandhi, but I've got some oats back there in my farm, and they're not the best oats, but they're working and they're growing. And I don't, once again, know. I've been telling myself this on a daily basis, and those that I talk to regularly know that I've been saying that if this recipe is the good and the bad. Isn't it funny with recipes? Sometimes there's like, it calls for like pepper and like a baking thing. You're like, why am I putting pepper into this brownie mix? I don't know if that actually is probably a bad example, but you get what I'm saying, when it's like requires a sour when the recipe's sweet. I've got this really weird convoluted recipe in life right now. There's a tremendous amount of things that I don't want in my recipe. 1,000%. If I could just go, whether it's elements, this, whatever it may be. But it's weird that at the end of the day, that's getting me to get my REM sleep. If that recipe is equaling this product, I'm cool with it.
There you go.
And I've been learning that whatever your recipe is, I feel like you have a moral obligation that if there is a product in your recipe that is absolutely like ludicrous, then it's up to you to remove it. So for instance, if you are trying to make a brownie and you're putting in some, nails, then you're just really an idiot.
And that's what recently started this process. I mean, just recently is, insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results.
Mm-hmm.
And the treasure you seek is in the cave you refuse to explore.
Mm.
At some point, I'm looking onto my life, and I knew various times through different understandings of like where I was at, looking onto myself. Always, I haven't always been the best person. I haven't always been a good person, but I've always been honest. It's been programmed into myself. This is how I dealt with things. Art, paper prosthetics are used as, paper prosthetics, origami swan, paper prosthetics I used because I was so desensitized that I used art and literature, poetry, anything and everything to basically be able to rekindle my emotion because I was so numb.
Right.
And I kept using everything to be able to also show what I mean to offer up by that is I've constantly been trying to learn. I've constantly been honest. When things have happened and I fell into a delusional state of mind with all this, drugs and different things like that happening, or the stresses, or the long hours, working 120 plus hours every 2 weeks, the craziness, isolation, being reclusive, a lot of things were, very hard. And amidst all that, I still was honest. And at some point I'm like, let me say this, and then I'll say this to say that. I emulate Saul Paul. Saul was he was a persecutor because he used to kill a lot of people, was very much not the ideal person, but a very smart man. At some point, he's knocked off his horse. A lot of people can attribute that to being the high horse or the pest or whatever the case may be. There's a lot of symbolism in what happened. He was blinded. At some point, he realized the presence of God, or having that relationship, and he saw the error of his ways. Not to say that one perceived the other, but to say that he overall he understood that he was wrong. Now, he was truly remorseful, and he meant it completely and absolutely in terms of his convictions. And he changed his name to Paul, and he basically turned his life whatever he wanted, cut his roots, and I emulate that. It's one of the first people that I always tried to emulate, because I've lived a vastly different life. I've lived through many different lifetimes. I had many different things. For one, I stopped fighting. I made a vow that I would never fight again. It's been 19 years.
You were a fighter guy, huh?
I had to defend myself. But
Spoke with those fists. Well.
You know, I mean, I almost lost my eye.
Damn.
I got teeth knocked out. I had my ear ripped off and sewn back on. But that's a different story. I mean, that was just me just going off. You know, knuckles pushed back, scars. That's why in the beginning I always wore pants because I have scars. I was just fun. Other experiences. But long story short, you know, I saw the falling and I almost hurt somebody. Felt really bad about it. Made a vow never to fight again. And I practiced being a martial artist in virtue, try to be in piety and overall, like, you know, evading the situation.
Right.
But long story short, what I mean by explaining by the story of Saul, every second is a pivotal point to turn yourself around. If you really want it, you can make anything happen. Anything. It's just how bad do you want it, and what are you willing to sacrifice? It's not important to make that happen. And in keeping with feeling your oats and stuff, knowing yourself, know thyself, knowing has to have the battle, it empowers you. It gives you the ability to understand limitation and what you can and can't do to be able to push it, tune yourself up. But ultimately, it's like, what do I do with that? How can I use that?
Right.
You know, once you're right within, go out into the world and so good. If you know Gandhi, if you know, be the change that you want to see in the world. He who conquers himself conquers the world. If you don't find any good people, be one yourself. I liken it to the stars. You know, there's one saying is like, you know, aim for the moon because if you miss, you're still among those stars. But what I mean to say in terms of good and bad people, good people are to the stars as bad people are to space. There's going to be more, you know, being bad and things of that nature as people leading towards that. It's a lot easier. It's easier. It takes more muscles to frown than to smile, but most people like to frown. That's like 32. But long story short, though, proportionally, in a way, in a poetic way, there are going to always be, at least currently, there's more bad than good. But at the same time, though, good people being stars, and each star being a sun, and each sun having the entire universe, all these things in the multiverse, and you know, different things of that nature, eventually all that stuff like staircase, time, like all you know, get that. Long story short, we illuminate all the space around us. Right. You know, they say it was like Kingdom Hearts. They said something like, the brighter your light becomes, the longer your shadow. That people try to extinguish your light. Yeah. But at the same time, when you have a bonfire kind of situation and dreams and things of that nature, I learned this through Berserk, the understanding that he was talking about seeing each other as equals and having ambitions and stuff like that. And if you're not building your dream, you're only building someone else's, and you're building into a bonfire. I mean, it's not a bad thing, but in terms of causes and doing things bigger and better than yourself. But it's one of those things. You know how we have that strength. Yep. You know
how I'm comparing it. There's this weird. I'm sure there's people way smarter than me that are making dissertations on it, but there's this weird psychology that we have as human beings and species that we seem to find it very. I don't know why fascinating, but the rubberneckers, when we see someone hurt or an accident on the road, primarily in a highway situation, we stop. And I noticed it today. I'm very rarely driving these days anymore. So I was in the car driving over I-95 the other day in Palm Coast, and there was an accident on 95, and there was traffic on the bridge going over the I-95. And I thought, we are so gross as humans. We just seem like, I'm like, literally, who doesn't hate traffic, obviously? But we're like creeping over I-95, and I see that there's an accident. But here's my point of saying that it's not all doom and gloom, because isn't it ironic that in the midst of somebody's tragedy or immediate, they call it first responders, right? Isn't it ironic that we as a human being in a species, that we see someone hurt and are, once again, your first reaction, instinct is to help.
That's a very interesting,
isn't it?
It's a very interesting.
So now, irrelevant of race, gender, whatever, political party, sports team, all of it's irrelevant. I guarantee you there's a nature out of not only curiosity, because that's what we're curious creatures, but when we see someone in pain, whether you're a doctor or not, most likely you're probably stopping.
That's very interesting. That's very intriguing because it humanized that for me. You telling me that because you're basically offering up that that we're biting back on the compulsion to want to help each other, as opposed to doing something because we're jaded and we just want to look at what
it's. And once again, I'm not trying to sound like
I mean, it makes sense.
But here I am in the car, and I had to learn this at a very young age, and not growing up in a very traffic-ridden area. But whenever I was put in a position where I wasn't able to get where I wanted to go, combined with if someone ever crosses my mind and they're reluctant to talk to me, most of the time I go and I resort to prayer. I know at that point now I'm probably supposed to be praying and talking and dealing with myself at this point. So whether I'm in traffic or whether the person's not answering the phone, let's just go ahead and self-reflect. Let's use this now time to just make myself better. And once again, my oats aren't that cool, but I got an oat or two out there. And I feel like that's kind of the soil in which that it's in. And that is stop trying to tend to somebody else's. So here I am, and I'm self-reflecting, and I'm thinking, what an amazing, like, it's a very multi-dimensional, very unique experience to go through when you're seeing somebody in pain and in tragedy and you want to help. And I feel like if we as humans start to embrace that more, not just in the midst of pain and death, that in reality, we're all having car accidents every day. Yeah. Every day there's bumper to bumpers, man. And you've got some whiplash today and you're coming home, and it's okay to get tended to, and it's okay to tend to. And I feel like, but it starts so simple. I saw Will Smith on Ellen DeGeneres the other day, like a small little clip, and they were rewarding these two dudes that had given this, like, and dude, I have no mind saying, and he embraced it too, like a super dorky kid who had gotten picked on, which sucked. And these two dudes gave him some clothes, were helping him out, and Will Smith came on the show. You know how Ellen does. Just making a really good story that much better by trying to make that contagious factor, helping. But Will Smith just said it best, and not that he's like the epitome of what we're supposed to be, but he literally said, it's so simple if you just remove yourself from what you think you are and who you think you need to be.
That's a very zen.
Just chill. And I'm not saying that once again, the Anthony Wells in me, I'm not saying I always exercise it, and it's okay for every 5 times if you only exercise it once. You got to but it's all about exercising it and getting better at it. And it really doesn't matter, dude. It's so crazy. All these guys that I just watched the documentary on U-Haul and Starbucks and all these. Who doesn't want to be a billionaire? Who doesn't? You'd be lying if you said you didn't want to have a yacht bigger than Ronaldo. But will it consume you? Will it own you? Will you do what you're doing now? And I learned this too. What you're literally doing now. And Anthony, this means it's happening at this very moment. What I'm doing now with this simple, easy peasy little show at my kitchen table is going to be the same thing I'm going to be doing when and if the time comes that I have a Ronaldo yacht. What you do with a little is going to be the same person you are when you do with a lot. And thank God I've had to enjoy the process, because when I was 17 years old, I wanted the yacht overnight. I wanted the clothing company to become Billboard. But it's funny because I would have owned me. It would have like completely owned me. And now I'm at a point where I'm putting my farm as important, not somebody else's farm. I got to take care of me. And then after I take care of me, then I may be able to lend a helping hand. But take care of yourself. And then once again, it's just a beautiful world out there. But it's really fascinating, isn't it? That traffic thing really got me. Everyone stops to look. And everybody's a first responder, man. It's so prehistoric. It's like it's understanding. Isn't it crazy?
Love is a universal language.
Yeah.
Hatred is something that's nurtured in.
It's powerful.
And it's very true. You're absolutely right.
But I'm proud of you, man, because it's, once again, when you reach out to me, which you'll never really know. You know, it's funny when people say, like, I know what it's like. I try never to say that. I used to say, I think we all said those things.
I mean, we can relate, but
we
never really know.
But like, no matter who I've had on the show and who I've been blessed with having in my life that's close with me and I talk to on a regular basis on the phone, I'm still an old school phone guy. I love being on the phone with people. I love talking with people, and I love hearing what's going on and what makes them tick. And I could tell you when they're telling me their stories, I don't go like, oh man, I know what it's like. You don't know, good or bad. Like, I don't know what it's like for you to win in Tekken. It's not the same for me. I have a different character. I love different levels, but the goal is the same. It's to win, right? But that feeling in the good and bad is always different and unique. And what I love about you is that when you reached out to me, you will never really know what it means to me. But do know it's very special to me.
Likewise. And I appreciate the audience and to be able to speak with you, out of respect for you in this platform, this venue and stuff like that. That's why I didn't come until now.
Yeah.
Because,
you were waiting
until you're right within, you can't really.
That's what's up, man.
As well, I really do appreciate it.
For sure, man. Really and the door is always open. You know that. I tell people, even and it's funny because as I'm growing and I've had friends of clients tell me, they're like, Billy Bob really doesn't like your style, and I'm like, well, I don't care. I sincerely don't care.
There's always going to be critics, but the critics don't necessarily produce artwork themselves.
I had a guy once say to me, he said, because in my emails with a lot of my clientele are very personable. I sign it with sometimes X's and O's and hearts, and depending on who they are and their genre, I'm me. I'm not corpo. You're not going to, but even in my appearance, I've noticed that as I'm growing, good or bad, but as we keep going around this sun here, I've noticed that I'm just pretty happy with who I am. I want to become bigger, better, stronger. But it's so weird because it's hard not to be liked, though, isn't it? Interesting.
It's hard not to be. I'm sorry.
It's hard not to be liked. Like if you literally could win the lottery today fiscally, and then I could come up to you within 24 hours and say, yo, Ant, this guy over here said you're weird, dude. Or he heard your podcast, said you were weird. I promise you. Now, granted, I feel like you're able to persevere, but in that moment, that $4 billion you won in the lottery, it doesn't even matter for that minute. It sucks you away. It really does.
It's like that. There was a picture of a graffiti back in the day where it had a squirrel with a bat, and he was standing in a hoard of nuts and said, "Protect your nuts." Like people have their agendas, and they're biding their time and doing whatever, and trying to get over you and saying different things, manipulating, being vindictive to be able to take something from you. And I never understood that, like that mindset, which is why I just went through all the stuff I just went through in Jacksonville and all the craziness that was up there, because there are people who don't see the work you put in. They just see this or see the material, or George Washington Carver says something to the liking of, don't judge me by my accomplishments, but the lengths to which I went to achieve them. And people don't understand the work you have to put in. They don't have to understand rolling up your sleeves. They don't understand the struggle. There's a lot more I didn't tell you about as far as my past. But we don't necessarily talk about that. What I mean to say by offering up that is that, I had to roll up my sleeves, man. One of the first jobs I had was just up the street at Turtle Shack. I worked there for a year and some change as a dishwasher. I went to Mellow Mushroom and different places, did more or less the same. I couldn't move up overall up there, and this was after getting off of a plane from an international flight going to an international school, because I went from SVA to Daytona State to over there at Camberwell and UAL and stuff, because, I grinded, I kept pushing the stuff, but I wasn't in the right place. Everything fell into decline because a lot of things were happening, and I was having a lot of issues at the time. And this is why, bleeding back into what prompted me to do all these things, the mind, body, and soul, the trifecta. One thing, for the mind, the body, and the soul are all interconnected, and if one thing falls into decline, they all fall into decline. So knowing this in the midst of all this stuff happening, in the midst of doing almost a lot of very terrible things, to where I walked off one day, and I at that point, suicide wasn't some romanticized kind of thing. It was like something with dates and times and exact ways. I went to the woods for 3 hours. I sat there and I prayed, and the thing is, I would also urge people not just to pray, but to also meditate, because in prayer, what I find is your answers are in the questions. If you look onto yourself and what you're saying, almost in a third person way and like a reflective way, you'll see what you really need if you can see it. But in meditation, it's going over the lessons and the different things and trying to settle in that and
Right.
see the implicated lessons and things. Long story short, I went out there. I was pretty much asking for a miracle. I sat there for 3 hours. It rained. I
Damn.
was sitting in the dark at Steel Bridge Road off in McClenny. It was like you cross a river, St. Mary's River, you cross into Georgia. That's literally where I was at. Whereas like I was on the Georgia-Florida borderline, and I was sitting there, and I was asking for a miracle because I was like, I'm at that point where not necessarily I don't I didn't think that God needed this or goodness, this, that, love and whatnot. I was just like, I am to a point where I'm so downtrodden, so tired, and I've carried this weight for so long and carried crosses and guilt and pain and suffering and anguish and abandonment and all these different things that have just been I'm completely undeserving of. And I realize that now as well, as far as being persecuted and, being genuine and honest. But at the time I was like, I can't do this anymore. I just can't. And what I came to was what I came away from it was the thought that I came away from it was just give it one more day. Grit your teeth and hit the snooze. I wrote a poem about this as well. Just give it one more day, sleep it off. I mean, I've slept it off most of my life. See the next horizon.
Right.
Any day vertical to the horizon is a good day. Any day above ground is a good day. And at some point the next day, things just mysteriously started falling in place. Things were really great. I left the relationship I was in, came down. Things were lining up, different jobs. I had embraced sobriety for a good bit of time. Things were amazing. I was seeing like then how capable I was. For whatever reason, I went back. Same situation happened. Got into a same kind of mindset because, again, vindictive friends, as well as what I was going through personally, people doubting me, constantly saying that I'm being disingenuous. They're saying that I'm narcissistic, I'm a child, I lack responsibility, I'm this way and that way, and you just don't see it. I'm like, no, I'm not who you think I am. I'm who I've said I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I let people confuse me to a point where I forgot who I was. Because that's all that's my whole intake was, just being in this miasma of constantly people down me. So eventually I left that again, came down here. I mean, I left the juvenile situation because it was just ridiculous. That's another thing, if I could speak on, it's ridiculous. The amount of neglect and abuse to these kids is fucking horrendous.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to curse. That's probably the only time I did.
It's okay.
But it's horrendous. People in a like fashion where an average person in today's day and age, as far as work ethic and integrity and reliability and all that stuff, they're going to piggyback off of your work. They're going to take credit for what you do. They're going to kick you while you're down and take credit while you're up, and constantly middleman everyone and just get by, but they do that on a day-to-day basis. And a lot of people are just responsible for things, as far as being accountable for things. These people are accountable for people's fucking lives and their kids. And, and I don't want to speak to, I'm going to try not to have dates, names, and all that stuff just for their confidentiality and stuff. But at some point there was a kid, I'm going to tell you a story. There's a kid who was in there, he's behind the door, and he's having a really hard time. He's banging his head against the wall. This kid was having a really hard time. He was breaking down being in there. His family had disowned him. He had no place to go. He was having a hard time. And the guy who I was relieving on one of the shifts, he's like, he just wants to come out. He's just trying to get your attention. I'm like, no, man, just no. And he's like, no, hey, you're a rookie. You don't understand how it works. I'm like, okay, fuck you. Get the fuck off my mind. And then when he left, I let the kid out. I let him help me clean up the mind. I let him do whatever. I had a conversation with him. That's why I love that. I loved being there because if I put on many hats, and that's why I love being there, because I needed to be there, because it's like I was a teacher, I was a counselor, I was a confidant, I was able to mentor people, I was able to learn things as far as being a student. There's so many different things that it works so well. This is while everything was happening as it was. Right. It would meant so much to me, but also the job, and how indulgent I am and how much I care. It tethered me to that place, and seeing the cruelty and how hard it is on them, and how things are their lives are being ruled by chaos, and their lives are being laid waste to, and people don't care, to where they allow somebody to have a psychotic break as a kid and not even do anything and blatant say, oh, he just wants attention. And I talked to him, just being able to talk to him, have him vent and do different things. It took him down to a level where he was chill. Another time, there are so many different examples that so many different times, man. That's some of the most monumental things I've done. There was one more.
No, I'm not interrupting. Go ahead.
There was a kid, and I told him he comes to kids are very smart. Not only are they impressionable, but very, very perceptive. They pick up on a lot. And at some point, this kid goes, he was saying something, being very wise alecky, and I'm like, I like that. I like that because sarcasm is a mark of a very intelligent, very sharp mind. And I'm like, as someone who's sarcastic, you basically see the folly in the different structural points and different things that are wrong that you can make better, and you see how ridiculous it is, and you turn it into satire. You turn it into it's funny to you because you see how stupid it is. Right. You're very smart. And he's like, you saw that? And I'm like, yeah, man. I mean, I've always been like a very perceptive kind of person. Besides the whole sixth sense kind of thing of like empathy and stuff. Some people have the same gift. Use it to like they become almost vampiric, where they, I pick up in more than one conversation in a room and stuff like that. I like mingling. I'm in terms of personality types, I think I'm an N or an INFT, I think.
Okay.
Rabbit as well as a Libra, so I'm very indulgent, very quick-minded. Always like constant. It's long story short though. A long time ago, I tried to pinpoint the exact gift I was born with. I thought it was drawing. It wasn't. Because when just as a painting is worth 1,000 words, I learned that you can use 1,000 words to paint a picture in someone's mind. So I basically went to writing, and everything that I learned thus far has been going back and forth on those extremes to learn to see the relationship and then learn different things, humanize it and make it something relatable. But the thing that I was mainly born with that I realized was my eye for detail and my perception, to be able to see something almost like in a structural way, to see I can knock on, see the structure and be able to move with no momentum, leverage, all that stuff. Or even in people, I see attributes, I see different characteristics, I see potential, and I'm able to. And that's why I wanted to be a teacher, because overall, I would just want to be used as a stem.
Right.
I'm just a person to have a conversation with. I know X, Y, and Z about a field that you love. Let me show you something that may aid you. You know what I'm saying? But ultimately, express yourself however you freely want to.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about, and parenthood is even more so than that.
Yeah, it was. I asked someone here yesterday that I'm hunting to go on the show, and I had said what they were sharing with me, a rather trial and tribulation they had went through, and I said, was that your number one, like come to Jesus moment, so to speak? So I call it, and she said no. And I'm thinking, what could have been worse? She would basically she like died basically. And I'm like, what could have been worse? And she said, when it happened to my kid. I was like, damn, no
parent should ever have to bury
like that was, see, I don't think like that because I don't have kids, but I thought that's that real, like here I am thinking like, what could be worse than you getting
I always
hurt?
think back to The Godfather 3, where his daughter got shot on the steps.
Yeah.
He cried out so much that he lost his voice,
kind
of thing.
Yeah.
It's excruciating. I can only imagine. But
that same, isn't it funny though, man? The irony is that same love is the same kind of love that as I'm trying to put into my land of oats. I'm trying to use that same love and that same, it's once again, not that I have nowhere near perfected it, but to really care about people is a really cool feeling.
That's good.
It's a cool feeling,
it's
man.
Good to instill that. And then there's an actual word for it, because I used to also look up in different dialects and language and different things like that. There's a word, I think it's called Mareki. It's a Greek word in origin. It actually means the essence of oneself, the soul that you put into your craft.
Yeah. It's powerful. And I do believe I know it's tough. It's a real world out there. So I know it's tough because people are like, yeah, it's cool, but I gotta go to work. And it's like, yeah, I know. It's tough. It's very, very tough to exercise love, man, because we're all getting in car accidents mentally every day. And no one, what's crazy? I told my wife this the other day. I said, I've sat with everybody that I've sat with on this show is a superhero to me. But in that moment, it's the most amazing, and you're experiencing. It's a wonderful bond. It's great. It's therapeutic. It's enriching. But as soon as this is over, you have a life to go to, and I have a life to go to. And I feel only a fool, because I speak for myself, only a fool tries to live in that moment forever.
Yeah.
Because that moment isn't promised forever. And that moment wasn't contingent on that person. It was that moment together. And it's the same kind of people out there that I almost keep my mouth shut when I do hear folks say, he or she makes me a better person. That job or this thing makes me happy. Not good, in my opinion, because I've had.
For one, they're becoming stagnant and they're plateauing.
Right. So I feel like it's tough because I'm extremely nostalgic. If I can't wait. I don't have them up right now, and I'm pretty sad because since we evacuated from this last hurricane, I have all my toys and all those things, and most of it have zero value, but they're all toys that I had when I was a kid.
Well, that's the sentimentality of it.
Right.
I get it.
But there is a mental breakthrough when you do realize that moment is not what your happiness still should be contingent on. It's the fact of the matter that it starts here.
Yeah. And those things are just tangible representations of things. Same thing with different symbols and archetypes. It's no different. They're just things that words are nothing more than indicators to infinite concepts. Yep.
But I find it admirable that you were apprehensive to come on the show or be a vessel because your vessel wasn't ready.
The same reason I want to come on the show earlier is the same reason that I turned down being a teacher, even though I did all this field experience. By the time I went through school, as far as associates and stuff, between high school and field experience working in schools and stuff, I had worked at Wadsworth at some point. I had 140 hours of volunteer service. Wow. Plus I worked for Habitat for Humanity. I built a house.
Nice, man.
I used to do a bunch of stuff. I was really adamant about that, but I knew that I was not of sound mind and body, or that I wasn't, even if I wasn't involved in all these things,
right.
I was later on, that I wasn't right within as far as philosophically, and I didn't necessarily want to do something not realizing, or say something not realizing, and then indoctrinate somebody into thinking some kind of way, because I wasn't right within to be able to articulate what I should and what isn't. And so I stepped back. I wasn't from an ethical standard.
Right. It's awesome,
to
man.
Be able to, because kids are impressionable. And to be a teacher takes you have to be a certain kind of personality where you have to be straight, tried and true, very, walk a long and narrow path and stay true to that and be consistent and persistent in what you do. I've walked off of that road. It's like the story of young Goodman Brown. I don't know if you know about that.
I don't.
Young Goodman Brown was a story from Salem kind of days. So like the Jersey Devil kind of.
Okay. Right.
Okay. So it's a story of life. This guy is walking on a road. This is where the whole symbolism of the road of life comes from, but that it pulls back to like threads of fate and different things like that. But long story short, he's walking on a road. He's standing still, walking backwards, going forward, going this way, going that way. Eventually he walks off into the woods and he deviates from the path, walks into the woods. In the woods, and this is historically how it used to be, people used to, as far as witchcraft and different things, are people who would go into the woods to do whatever,
right,
and go off the grid or anything to that effect. They were in the woods, and people always told, don't stray from the path. I mean, even in the Lord of the Rings, they alluded to that.
Right.
So the whole thing, it's a moral story of like being on the road, following fate and free will, good and evil, choices, forks in the road. Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken. Hold on, I'm sorry, I got it just because I'm a dork. Two roads and I could wait now.
Someone's commenting now on it.
Two roads and I cannot.
Don't worry about it if you can't get it, Holmes.
Two Roads, Robert Frost. I shall be telling this with the size somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in the wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that made all the difference. That's the end stanza. It's like a fork in the road decisions. But anyway, the whole story is pretty much about aligning with your way of truth, or finding yourself in that journey, and trying to, because what I believe, what I'm coming into is like actualizing, realizing your dreams and your purpose. And okay, so you find your gift, you find your gift, you find your gift, you find your value, you find your purpose, you act on your purpose, find your niche and all that stuff. You express all these gifts. You fulfill your purpose. You fulfill your destiny. You're an alarm clock that can ring. You become of use. You can be dispatched for the greater good. For me, it's like I need to be of clear mind, body, and soul, and be of clear to state, which I'm fine. That's why I'm so happy, because it's like I've given up the hardest thing. The only one vice is gone, and I had to realize too. But another thing I didn't say, because there's all these other backstories as well, as far as me falling through the cracks and I got thrown out of the public education system altogether. Didn't know what to do with me because all of these things going on. I'm reflecting all this. Like, how do you go from almost having your back snap and having to go back to school? Right. How do you go and see things that, there's craziness and go back to school? And people looked at it like, no, there's something wrong with them. They tried to feed me Ritalin when I was a kid and all this other stuff. Eventually I fell through the cracks because I didn't know what to do with me. I actually was put in special education.
Wow.
For 4 years.
Wow.
And I didn't learn multiplication until I was in the 6th grade. And the way they treated us was fucking horrendous. They told me one time that if I went to college, to say that I would go to college would be so much of an impossibility that it's sarcastic for me to even say that I would go to college. Wow. And I went to 3. Right. Long story short, though, but besides that, my sister, before she had gone to Harvard, because very smart person as well, she was in Hunter College High School. I mean, in New York, it's the school that almost looks like a castle. It's like they groom you to get. Always been very like another prodigy. And what I would literally do is she would come home. I would sneak into her room and I would study everything. I would read constantly. I would do anything and everything because, again, being stigmatized, having people think I'm, talking down to me or say I'm stupid or, patting me on the head. All these different things, man. I mean, that's nothing. That the whole experience being in TCS, which was the place I was at, there was a different dynamic versus mainstream, because when I was there, it was like there was this fraternity, this understanding humanity of like we're all in the same pot, we all get treated the same. And we might have this or that thing about us that we struggle with, but we're going to look out for one another, because ultimately the people who are causing us the most grief are the people who are teaching, whatever case, because they basically come in there and they rag on you. They basically come in there and talk down you because, same thing with how people deal with mental health. You go in there, if anyone has gone in there, they can attest to. Right. It's fucking horrendous, to where they treat you like you don't have enough ability or you're not cognitive enough to be able to govern your own life. Right. And they treat you like nothing, And as I found out, I don't know. So going back to the story, so left there, they tried to put me on all types of medicine. We fought a tooth and nail. We actually had some level of lawsuit against all these people because they basically were trying to dictate all this stuff for basically me acting out and behaving a certain way, because it was a complete reflection of what was going on. How are you going to deal with that and return to normality and stuff? So they treated it as something else. And at some point, I got reevaluated and stuff. I went back into mainstream. I couldn't go into public education because of all these things happening. I went to Catholic school. Went to St. Joseph's. It's around the time when all this stuff happened with 9/11 and stuff. We're watching, we had binoculars, seeing people jumping out the windows. I mean, we were that close. Like, things were horrible. And a lot of things were going on in my life as well at the time that I can't really talk about. It's just family. That's fine. But at the same time, the way I was treated there, and that change from we all have to stick together to no, we're all in competition, and now everybody's going to be cutthroat and jaded in this way and that way, and we're going to make fun of you and do undercutting mean things. We're not going to look out. It was crazy. I had situations where people were really mean. I had people actually write my girlfriend later on, Nicole, I was telling you about vulnerability as a strength. They actually sent her a letter threatening her and threatening her mother and threatening our teacher, and then signed my name at the bottom of it.
Wow.
Cops showed up to my class, my room, and they're like, "You're Anthony, right? Did you write this?" I read it. I was like, "This is complete horseshit." I'm like, "Why would I misspell my own name?" This is what I'm talking about. People have been ridiculous, crazy. The whole thing when I almost lost my eye, we're playing football. They set something up to where they just were fake a pass, and a guy ran into me in the temple. The glass is curved into my, and almost took my eye. People were mean, you know. And all I wanted, man, was a clean slate. Yeah. And when I got to high school, and I went to LaSalle Academy, I wanted to get into Xavier, like my uncle. I also very much emulate. I took a lot of his poetic sense from him, and he's a very awesome, smart man as well. Played for Penn State at some point, became like a financial guru himself. He became a sports agent, did different things. Very awesome cat as well. I think he was on I think Hardball or Moneyball or something to that effect. Awesome guy. Again, I keep these people have been great examples to me. But at some point, I mean, dude, I had it really rough as far as all that stuff. And people just kept with that outcasting, pariah kind of thing, casting guilt on me or whatever the case is. Even church, man. I went to church. That place was a sanctuary for me. It meant a lot. I would be there every single Saturday and Sunday. I would go to coffee hour. I'd do whatever I could because it meant everything. It was immaculate. And the people there, they, in terms of organized religion and communities and being in a bad church, they say, my grandfather, another wise thing he always says is when you point a finger, you point three back at yourself. Mm. These people did all this random stuff, and I called them out on it at the time. And then they came down on me. They tried to make me seem like I was hitting my cousin, just a bunch of crazy stuff. And I eventually left the church at 13. I got confirmed, and then I left. I was like, you guys are all hypocrites. I cannot be here because you completely taint everything that you're saying. And you're doing that with your example of how you're treating people. I'm a kid. And the way the things they're doing is disgusting as far as how they were looking, how they were treating people, and the sewing circles and the gossip rings and this and that. And, oh, did you hear this? And, oh, I tilted my head to a 35-degree angle, so I must be this kind of person. And, they said I was gay or something to the fact, not to say that being gay is wrong. Right. It's absolutely not wrong at all. But to say that these people were constantly in judgment of me. And it never stopped from there. I mean, as far as continuously getting on. So get to high school, I'm like, it's a completely different setting. I can reinvent myself and continue to learn. I was so thirsty to learn because I've been deprived my whole life from knowledge to be able, because again, multiplication, 6th grade. So all I did was like, what can I learn? Almost like instinctually. And I kept learning, kept grinding and to the point where when I left high school, number one, it was a parochial Catholic school. So it was a private school. It's more advanced. Anyway, I was in AP classes, all my classes. I was in every club that they could have had, I won some things. I mean, as far as, I have trophies, medals. I was on the handball team varsity for singles and 4 years. Junior varsity 1 year, varsity 3 years. Involved in different types of clubs, different activities, mentorship, volunteer service, wrote plays for the school at some point. And then again, these are some of my heroes, some of my best. The heroes, the teachers like Mr. Roderick, Miss Showman, Mr. McCormick. These people put faith in me that I didn't have, that no one had. And They gave me a chance, and they showed me a lot of things. And I got into riding a lot more because of it. But Mr. Roderick actually took something that I wrote about 9/11, the experience that I wrote about 9/11 in hindsight, and he used it in a play they did off Broadway in like Washington Square Park and stuff around that area. But long story short, I kept grinding until by the time I left high school, I was AP everything. I was involved in all these different things. Played handball. I almost became like an A player. I was well known. I had different circuits because I lived in Lower East Side. I used to walk to school. Things were the best that, at the time they were the best. And by the time I left high school, after having all this stuff happened, there was many more things I didn't talk about, like drowning, all that stuff. But at some point, in car accidents, there was more than that one car accident, by the way. At some point, by the time I left high school, and how hard I grinded and how well I did on my SATs and all other stuff and everything that I was involved in. I think I got a letter from Duke University, and they asked me to go there, and I actually turned it down because I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to be an animator. I've always been fascinated with the smoke and the mirrors, Tex Avery, Fred Quimby, Chuck Jones, Walt Disney, and it bleeds back, like just like music, how everything you can trace it back, different things it rolls in, like same thing. It's just so beautiful. So I kept going into these things. I went to SVA. I went to School of Visual Arts.
Nice.
Then say stop motion, and that's when as far as like taking drugs onto myself, it's like 17 or 18, and things with everything else happening at the time, like mom getting cancer, different things like that, different things that triggered emotional response. It was just very hard, and again, a lot of stuff. I think one of the I could point back to reading Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye, and I took a feminist class, and looking into psychology, abnormal psychology, interpretation of dreams, and things of that case, and really using it as tools to be able to look onto myself objectively, to suck out the poison and to do different things for my own benefit. I realized a lot because in the past I was very desensitized, very numb. I always respected myself more when I was younger, until just recently, because I had an undeniable strength because I compartmentalized them, put them somewhere, and didn't worry about it. I didn't have an emotional connection. I basically did whatever. It was completely irrelevant. I did what I had to do. I didn't think about it, but that was also not necessarily the best thing. And when I basically looked into these things in this introspective kind of, look into things, and I started picking at wounds eventually in that metaphor, like I bled out because the repressed memories, all the pains and all the things, it all came flooding back, and it all came to a head with the whole thing of my mom. And, then comes in the mental health aspect. Then comes in me having to leave SVA because I couldn't handle the stress. And then comes in the mental health aspect as far as how they treated it. Instead of being like, look, you have all this traumatic stuff happening, just have a conversation. Instead, they try to push all this medicine. And if you know anything about medicine as far as different things, like in that regard, you may not be depressed, but if you take antidepressants, a side effect is depression. And, a lot of the things, the pill mill kind of way of looking at things. I mean, they even have pushed Oxycontins to people as young as 12 years old. This is the society we live in as far as the opioids and all things. And every time I would go in, it was mainly, looking back now, it was mainly because of what I was struggling with as far as all the dynamics of what I was struggling with in my past or my mindset, but also drugs, because just it's a horrible thing. I mean, if I had to suggest anything as far as dealing with things, you do not, like I was saying, you don't discover anything, you uncover. You're not having a transformative thing happen, you're having metamorphosis. I mean, it's good to look through the glass every now and then to see outside of your perspective, possibly, but ultimately it's not worth it. And you're taking on something to yourself to be able, you're poison. Beer is nothing more than being able to have food poisoning, to have euphoria, whatever the case. Sober mind intoxicated mind speaks a sober heart. If I can't speak my mind, I can only sing my heart. People take these things onto themselves and they can use them as tools, but ultimately it's not worth it, because you're going to come into this understanding naturally anyway. It's better that you don't, because every single time you take a sip or a smoke or you do this or that, you're literally taking you're edging away at your life to be able to come into these different understandings or whatever the case. And it shouldn't be attributed to that. You should learn simply through simplicity is a simple city. There's so much to learn, in the silence all the answers are there, you know what I'm saying? But I just want to finish the one thought as far as mental health. So things kept snowballing into different things. At some point, after I've committed myself 4 times, and each time was longer, and after having a breakdown to where there was a guy who I worked. He gave me a job doing a U-Haul job, and I packed 3 U-Haul trucks, and then unpacked the next day in West Palm Beach. And the day I did all this, I got so tired, and had so much stuff going on that I had like a lump over my arm, and my whole body went numb. He's like, no, just keep working. It's how the people I was around, right? I had almost like a heat stroke. I had heat exhaustion. Like my body was breaking down. Went in, at the time I was like, look, man, I'm looking for a job. I've gone off my medicine as well because I want to see where I'm at. Please don't smoke. You know what I'm saying? Please let me see, just please, because I need to find work at the very least. I went to sleep. He smoked out the car. I woke up full psychosis. Went into my car the next day.
You gotta go ahead.
Went scam likely.
Nice.
I try to keep my eyes open, ear to the ground. But long story short, I mean, I was in such, because the mind, body, soul, all interconnected, and all this stuff was happening. I broke down on the highway, driving up to Jacksonville, trying to find my medicine. Damn. And basically, the cops came and they see me walking on the highway, going into Jacksonville. They Baker acted me. Damn. Went in, and they basically, when I was there, they tried at least 6 or 7 different psychotropic medications on me just for shits and giggles, like guinea pig me or whatever. And the things it was horrendous. It's hell on earth, And that's how the first time going into the situation, as far as like the overload, the sensory overload of all these things, that's how I died the second time.
Damn.
I literally imagined the same thing, which is ironic because the whole thing it became prophetic, that dream, and how I took it throughout the years.
Right.
I imagined, because again, they're just doping you up with all this shit, making you flip out with all this medicine. And I just imagined that in a metaphor, like somebody was sifting through my memories in a file cabinet and just changing these around, just fucking with my head.
Yeah.
And because that's how batshit crazy, because you're constantly being doped up with like syringes and people, you know what I'm saying? Like in there, like it's nuts.
Dude, the scariest movie to me that you've hinted on a lot, literally the scariest
One
movie.
Who Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Man. I can't watch it. Watched it once, can't watch it again.
Yeah, they've actually lobotomized people in the past for many thing, and electroshock therapy for one. For those who don't know, they actually used to do that to people who were gay because they saw homosexuality as a mental illness, and they've been lobotomized for it.
It's crazy.
This is how crazy and bad. It's fucking nuts.
Yeah.
Okay. I had to suffer so greatly, and but I say that to say this: after going to sobriety, it's been like 8 months or more.
Nice, man.
Stopped taking my medicine 2-3 months ago, and I proved to myself overwhelmingly that they were full of shit, and they basically it's just basically a ploy to make money and to offset this, compound whatever, planned inefficiency. You want to quench your thirst? Let's give you soda that has sodium and all this stuff in it, make you thirstier. Let's sell you cars that crumple. They pretty much. I let people rule my life.
Not anymore.
I let people rule my life, and likewise in similar fashion. Because again, that's the flip side to internalizing everything. That's the flip side to being vulnerable. That's a flip side to being transparent, as you're an open book, and people take that and they use it against you, especially when you're in a miasma and you're on drugs. It distorts your reality, distorts your understanding of self. It becomes something of itself. It empowers your reptilian brain as far as your involuntary impulses and things of that nature. It's probably the most difficult thing because you're inflating the ego, and when yourself fights against it, it's very hard. It's an uphill battle, but somehow by the grace of God, things that happened and transpired, as well as the good people put in my life, as well as returning to family after being reclusive for 5 years of being a ghost, as well as all the different things step by step, day by day that I picked up on and saw. It's amazing. God is so good, man.
Yeah, man.
And this is what I mean to say also about it. And that's why I'm glad to try to keep on the thing. But God truly is real, man. Like, and it's not the understanding. I mean, every religion alludes to it through scripture. Every religion is completely right. Every perspective is completely right. I found my relationship with God through Christ. Religion is nothing more than a portal to having a relationship with God. I relate I relate through Christianity because frankincense, myrrh, and gold they bring to a God-made man and a man-born king. As far as demagogical figures, as far as part God, part man, divine and immortal and all that stuff, I can relate to Jesus a lot more than I can relate to something that is so abstract as everywhere and nothing, master of all that's seen and unseen, of all domain that exists out of space and time that created all of that. That's that abstract that can manifest like that. It's beyond my understanding concepts. Right. So I emulate or try to look to Christ as far as to walk in his footsteps. And there's also a beautiful thing about numerology. Judas betrayed Jesus. There are 12 disciples. 12 usually is indicative of a complete circle. He fell out of the circle, making it incomplete. Matthias, the 13th disciple, who helped him at the stations of the cross to help the cross. And this is why 13 is also can be either lucky or unlucky. He is humanity. He is he represents the message. What we would do with it, we have it in us to do good. We fight back on it. This man was like, I don't want to be bothered. The way he came back and helping him, just the same way people stop and look at the accident. Mm-hmm. It's that nature of like the kindness that we should act on, and ultimately it's like the wild card of what we do with it. But there's so many things that bleed into other understandings, like 12 representing the lotus. There's so many things like 40. So 1 whole, 2 duality, 3 trinity, 7 lucky, 6 evil, or whatever the case may be. 12 is complete. 40 usually speaks on a journey or some kind of pilgrimage or Mecca, not Mecca, but a pilgrimage of some kind. I mean, there's different things, symbolism. But long story short, I started this whole theological look into things, and I try to connect dots just to find what overlapped, Right. And I realized through just this whole experience how not only how beautiful it is, and the whole thing about the artist relationship, the artist model, in terms of looking at life, reality, and stuff like that. But it's so true, man. Getting back to psychology. Psychology comes out of the Hindu understanding of the psyche, the soul of the mind. But there's also the mandala, the soul in the hand. There's I think Plato. It's like Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle. They talked about I think it's the polyhedron or something, like the God particle, the right. thing, in the space or wind tunnels, and things like that, or the soul and the heart, the indomitable spirit, the heart of man, the guts. There's a story, 2 stories, and I don't mean to talk so much. I'll end with these points, and then the story of Marathon. There was a guy who was from Athens or something to that effect. And he basically saw that his village was under siege. They're going to be killed, slaughtered. And he ran for like 2 straight days to warn people to get them reinforcements. And once he got the message out, he dropped his heart exploded. And that's the story. That's where the story of Marathon comes from, is that he ran for 2 straight days till he died after saying the message, to be able to get aid. Yeah. But there's also the story of the guy. I mean, because I only learned this, went on a field trip. I went to someone who was a heart doctor, something to that effect. Yes, a picture of a guy. He's either Athens or Sparta, something to that effect, an older ancient civilization stuff. And there was a guy at the gate of the town, and the entrance of the town, and he had no head. And he was walking, and we were like, "What's up with that?" And he was like, "It's a story, a legend of a guy who got his head cut off, and he wanted so badly to go home that he walked all this way without a head and dropped dead at the gates." The same kind of understanding of Rashomon. Even if a samurai gets his head cut off, he could perform an action with one more action with certainty. Or even the thing, but it's a different kind of understanding, like the widow who waits for a lover at sea or something to that effect. But that's more like a Pandora's box kind of hope kind of thing. Yeah. But life, there's so much implicit beauty, and there's so many lessons and everything.
You fed me a lot today, bud.
Likewise, man.
You fed me a lot.
Likewise.
And I've taken so many mental notes that I will probably give you a credit this as much as I can, but I will begin to start to ask people what they feel their gift is in this earth.
It's powerful. Sometimes hard to find, because some things like again Dar and the random stuff, it stemmed from a gift that I didn't, That's a unique thing to find, because each one of us is born with a specific thing.
Yeah.
And if you nurture and express it, and again, the whole thing with disposable arts and, master of none, jack of all trades, expressing all those things, expressing who you are uniquely, you lend something that's completely, the whole understanding of weird, right? Look to the Weird Sisters. The Weird Sisters were oracles. To say that you're weird is a high compliment.
Yeah.
Because you're saying that you're limited edition, that you're fated to be that way.
Extraordinary. It's funny when you I didn't probably slow that word down until I was way older. I wasn't a kid. And then I remember extraordinary. You say it so fast growing. I did anyways. It's just like one word, like extraordinary. It's not extraordinary. It's extraordinary. There's something about, and you are an amazing man, dude.
Likewise.
Yeah, dude. You got a lot of heart. You got a lot of life in you, and I can only say to you that Rogan said one thing one time during a show, and he says, "I don't care if anyone was watching. Would do this just to sit down with you." And I mean that. It's something that applies to you and everyone that I've sat down with, and I've learned a hell of a lot from you, man. It's a good thing. And through your trials and tribulations, I've self-reflected in this moment of time of just realizing that it's a big world out there, man. But it's really important to focus on those 6 inches. And I feel like you've been very vulnerable in sharing that. Most importantly, you focused on those 6 inches in the last couple months more now than ever. And that's awesome, man. And
it's been a crippling, very low point. But
don't stop.
When you hit rock bottom, the only way is up.
Yeah, man.
And sometimes you're allowed to hit rock bottom to realize that God is the rock at the bottom.
Yeah, man.
And when I met Topher up as well as about God in the relationship, I found God through Christ. That person may find God through Buddha. This person may find God through Muhammad. This person may find God in a humanist, atheist way of doing good without God, as far as just doing kind acts and good deeds without being prompted by fire and brimstone and consequence.
Right.
Everyone lends to the same thing. It's a tapestry. Yeah. It's the greater good. It's being agent of good. It's adding to the grand design. It's the mechanistic clockwork of reality. How everything's interwoven and connected. It's there's so many things, man. Everything is such a fine balance. You can look at the most infinitesimal thing. I could look at a blade of grass, and we will never be able to replicate that perfectly. We can't even create a perfectly round object.
It's true.
No matter what our intellect is, we'll never be able to have that technology to just replicate what already is. Everything that we have is derived from things placed in existence for us. And on this planet, in this universe, we have so many elements to play with. Imagine other places, and there's so many different things, man. I mean, if I talk about science, because I completely attribute to what they're saying too. Everything speaks to the same exact phenomenon, the Big Bang.
There's a respect for everything, I think, and you've got that, man, and it's a powerful thing. And I keep hearing Picasso's, there's nothing new under the sun, basically, with art. It's all
the
just
purpose is to find your gift. The meaning is to give it away. As well as, every person's an artist is remaining one when you grow up. That's the challenge. And,
you're a great man, man. It was, I was really looking forward to today. Well, I know that you're a humble guy too, but you have to understand, everyone's got a different, everyone's got a pedigree, and your pedigree to me, you're my Dragon Ball Z guest. I love those kind of, there's never an agenda. But you came to love and you came to share and you fed some people today, man. Most importantly, me. And I mean that sincerely. You got a lot of heart, and I really appreciate you more than you know. And I think what's great is that as we grow older and grayer, which is happening, I hope to be part of your life, and you always got a seat here, man.
And those that know me, to fight that lone wolf impulsion. I have to stray away. I should stay.
Well, you do you too. You have to understand one. Camille and I talk about this a lot privately. Is I think as we're doing this adulting thing, maybe people I think appreciate with the fact that when you call, we answer, but we're not really gonna. we tend our farm, and it's hard. It's hard to, and I think I think you're figuring it out. We're figuring that out. You've got to,
because the world spins, but we don't feel it
Yeah,
move.
man.
I've looked up a lot of times. I mean, the world spins, but we don't feel it move.
Yeah.
I've looked up a lot of times from my life, and years have passed, you know, and I look back on my friends and family, and it's probably the most regret I feel now is that time wasted.
Yeah, time.
I mean, it's everything, you know. That's why I'm so
But you're in a
happy
good
home
place
as well.
now.
I'm in a good place. I'm able to help and to make good. I can only move forward. I can only take lessons and to apply it. But never again. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no. Yeah. And like, not that you need my reinforcement and nor my accreditation, but I applaud you.
Thank you.
I applaud you because there are a lot of people that will try to remind you of your failures. I hope to be remembered as a gentleman that doesn't really like to hover around that. My wife knows I'm forming negative amnesia. She'll sometimes even remind me of a person, place, or thing, and I go back to that person, place, or thing, and she's like, "You do realize they cut your leg off last time you were there?" And I said, "I don't really remember. I forgot." But point is, I applaud you, and I want you to continue to do what you're doing because I'm watching you. And not that it's me, but we all have a greedy wee bit of nature, and I do find a lot of self-gratification off of you being vulnerable and honest. And I love watching you digitally because it makes me realize that we're all just humans, and we really do. Technically, I think our blood is blue, but we bleed red.
Yeah, when it hits oxygen.
And that's really what it comes down to. Is you make me want to pick up something that someone dropped faster and give it back to them. Does that make sense?
It's within our power and our ability.
Yep.
Doing what you can is not doing what. Doing what you can is exhausting every last option. Yep. Doing everything in your ability.
We did it, bro.
Yeah.
We'll have to do another one because you got a lot.
Two things I would want to say to number one, I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Very welcome.
Learned just as much, more from you. Siphoned a lot of wisdom, and I'm glad that I came at this junction in time in my life to be able to speak and articulate things as I would like to. You know.
Yeah.
Document all these things. It's a constant process. I've been using this constantly in the last 21 plus years. I mean, as far as writing, as far as drawing, it's been before I could walk. You know, if it's a mannerism of how I am, when I started learning how to walk, I actually was running. I would run before I was walking, and then I would slow down to a walk, and I actually almost ran into traffic. And then when I started walking, I fell down. Or when I was riding the bike, it took me 10 pushes. Like, things like that, you know. So I always had an interesting. My mom too. Again, awesome. Like she used to tell us, pick out the instruments in this.
Yeah.
We would watch movies. Where's the bad edit? Where did they mess up on the transition? Where you could see them being like this, they pan over there and they're like that, like, or seeing the symbolism, seeing the context, different things, just deviant mindsets. Critical minds, stuff like that's why I love George Carlin. He's my favorite comedian of all time. But just constantly question things, have a deviant nature, and not necessarily deviant, not necessarily rebellious, but to be an anti-hero, be curious, stand alone in who you are as a person.
You're a curious man, dude. There's nothing wrong with that.
And different, even though there's different things, different demographics and categories and stuff, they just allude to something. They paint somewhat of an ideology or where you're at and stuff. It's just a description, but that's again words, man.
Right.
They try to define things. You cannot define somebody. These are just different things that are indicative or whatever, but that's just a different flavor to what they believe, whatever. But you'll focus on the wrong things. And the second thing I want to offer up, the last thing was this poem. And I just wrote this the other day. This is after 2 years of not writing a poem anyway. And it pretty much sums up at least where I was feeling. So, and I call this Call to Purpose. So weave tapestries from rhapsodies, teeming on within, have tenacity, audacity to dream once again. The task you see, the current fee is for you to transcend. Ignore flattery, elastic reeds, don't break, only bend. For in mastery you clasp your seed, blossom and ascend. The travesty is savagery from those who just pretend. The allergy, normality, refuses what you lend. It's cowardly to just concede and shrink your soul instead. I mean, that was like 10 minutes. I've been there's longer ones than that.
Bro, I can't even, there's nothing to say. There's nothing to say to that. That's
Disposable
amazing.
Disposable art's just chicken scratch impression to life, man.
It's gorgeous, bro.
Oh, thank you.
I want like a photo of that or something.
You can actually have that.
Nah.
I mean, I have the other one.
If anything, I'll probably have you rewrite it.
The other one that was a rough draft.
Dude,
and
that's gorgeous.
I cleaned it up on this side, so you could have it.
No. Don't rip it out of it.
It's fitting. No,
come on.
It's yours. I took pictures of it. I've documented it. It served its purpose for me, man.
Dude, you're blowing my minds.
There you go. Hopefully, I sign it.
And I get me a little scribble in the back.
Only the illusion of coincidence, man. Everything.
Damn, bro. I'm all about dates too. You got the date on there and everything.
Yeah.
I got a pen.
Sign and date everything.
Yeah, man. Bro, I can't even tell you. I mean, I'm blown. I got nothing to say except for thank you. I don't even know what to say, but thank you very much. We will edit that post, like, to make sure I put some tags on there for anybody you want to give some accreditation to. But dude, we'll do it at the end. Anything? I mean, dude, thanks. I'm like shell shocked. So man, I'm mad respect, bro.
It's an honor being here. I appreciate being in your company, man.
All right, man. We'll cut it off. Speechless, Holmes. Speechless. That was gorgeous. Damn.